Hopefully we are. Good evening and welcome to our city council meeting. Appreciate we have more people than usual out here tonight, and it's always great to see your smiling faces when I see a number of you have face coverings on, and thank you. As we get started this evening, I'm missing Ryan. There you are. Hi. So Ryan Frank with Involved Church is here, so we will open in prayer. And Ryan, thank you for coming forward and opening us in prayer right here. And after that, if you would lead us in the pledge, we would appreciate it.
It's right here?
Right there.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for having me this evening. Glad to be here. And let's pray. Well, Father, we come to you tonight just asking for help because we know you as the creator of life. You hold all things in your hand, and you alone are God, and there is none like you. So thank you for another day of life. Thank you for the people you put in our lives, the circumstances that bring joy, and for even the ones that challenge us and help us to grow. The city of Nampa is looking for your help. In this room, we have a number of leaders that love the community, the people, the businesses, the way of life we have, and their own families. And we're in the midst of a crisis, and to be honest, there's really no easy answer. And you, Father, above all, know what it is like to have people that disagree with you and challenge your authority. And you know how difficult it is to direct people to do what is right. And so I ask you to show compassion on these leaders and give them wisdom to make difficult decisions, give them strength to see those decisions through, give them clarity to present guidelines and policies that represent their good intentions, and give them confidence that the final decisions they make are the best decisions for Nampa. They need direction with this pandemic, but they also need direction with all the other things that the city is going through. And so I pray you would be with them and guide them. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you so much. And I just want to thank you for your leadership in our community. You have worked diligently at bringing community together and reaching out and making a difference. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you for being here tonight, too. Thank you. So our city clerk is present this evening, and she is online. And so I just told her I welcome her distancing in her office, just like right over there. But she will be doing roll call virtually. And so, Debbie, feel free to move forward with work.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Bruner?
Here.
Mucci?
Here.
Levi?
Present.
Haverfield?
Here.
Bauer?
Here.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. But before that, any proposed amendments to the agenda. And I do have two. The first one is that we're going to move item 5-16 on the agenda, and that is to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with the Nampa Police Protective Agency. That will be moved to August 17th, and that is with all of our mutual agreement, so we will not be doing that this evening. And then I am going to adjust to where after the proclamation, I'm going to immediately move into mayor and council comments, and then we will do the citizen 3-minute opportunity to speak. So are there any other amendments to the agenda that the council's aware of? See none, would there be a motion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we accept the agenda with the adjustments as approved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sandy Levi, and then Councilman Rodriguez as the second. I'm just saying that for Debbie. She probably had it, but just in case. So if there's no discussion, roll call.
Bruner?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
So the next item on the agenda are proclamations, and I actually have a proclamation that I would like to read this evening. And this is a proclamation really about Nampa uniting for economic and health recovery. and I'd like to read it to you. And then following this, we'll visit for just a second, and I've asked Ed Castledine to also share with us this evening. So, whereas the community of Nampa is a community where neighbors help neighbors and where we care for each other. And whereas we acknowledge that COVID-19 is a virus that is highly contagious, its impact can be unpredictable, and it has the capacity to create serious illness and even take lives. And whereas we acknowledge that physical distancing, washing hands, and face coverings can help reduce the spread of the virus. Whereas it is acknowledged that our community has diverse views of this virus and how to combat it. We acknowledge the individual rights that our Constitution provides each citizen. We also acknowledge that face coverings can only reduce, not fully stop, the spread of the virus. And whereas the City of Nampa is committed to providing trustworthy, transparent information to our citizens at all times, and now specifically related to the COVID-19 virus and its impact on our local community. And whereas we desire to honor and protect the vulnerable and the elderly in our community. And whereas our children need to have access to in-school instruction where they can learn and participate in activities and benefits they derive from the educational environment. Whereas we recognize that unless we reduce the spread of this virus, our schools cannot open and our businesses suffer and we cannot return to life as we knew it. Now, therefore, I, Debbie Kling, Mayor of the City of Nampa, Idaho, ask our community to come together with each person doing their part to achieve a quick recovery from this virus, both physically and economically. And I do hereby proclaim August through December of 2020 to be Nampa United for economic and health recovery, encouraging our residents to return to shopping local, to respect our local businesses by physically distancing and wearing a face covering to help protect employees and others in our local shops. Let us turn to the Lord and seek His face, asking the Lord to spare our city so that we can achieve our goal of being a safe and healthy community where people prosper. It's imperative that we all do our part and that we do what we can to protect those around us. Please do your part. I say that and proclaim that in that we have an amazing community, and it's going to take everybody working together to make a difference. And so that's my ask of our community, is that everybody will do their part to make a difference because we need our kids back in school. With that, and with the intent to provide trustworthy, transparent information to our community, we've put together a health advisory task force. Ed Castledine, a long-term Nampa resident, has volunteered to help lead that. And I asked Ed if he would come this evening and just share briefly some of the work that we're doing. We can also update, I don't know if you got to visit with Nikki Zog, but we do have permission to use the Nampa information for weekly updates and even maybe more frequently.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And thank you, Council, for giving me a couple minutes to speak. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces. It's been an interesting few weeks since we announced about this task force. And being a longtime resident, I think doesn't really buy you anything, but it certainly helps you understand the gravity of some of the situations that we find ourselves in. And when it's personal, then it's a little easier to get engaged, and probably sometimes it's a little easier to get too engaged. And sometimes this kind of thing becomes personal. And I think in my mind the goal is to have it be personal where it's appropriate, but also to be able to be objective and to work with a group of people to come up with the right information that will help drive decision making. I think that right now one of the places we find ourselves in is the landscape is dominated by extremes, and it's dominated by extremes on one side or the other, and those polarizing comments, articles, what have you, really are not all that helpful. What we're trying to do as a committee is land on an agreement to use the right information to help decrease the amount of fear in our community. And I think that right now, one of the things we see, I'm the CEO of Salter, and you know, in our clinics and with our physicians, all of our providers, we see some pretty unprecedented things happening. We see people who are avoiding healthcare because they're scared of the virus. We see people that are having heart attacks and strokes that are choosing to stay home and endure that. And a lot of them, unfortunately, passing away in their home because they don't want to come to the hospital because they're scared of contracting the virus. Conversely, we see other people that don't take this virus seriously, that think, this is just political. This is just a stunt. It's just an election year problem. And I don't believe that's true either, because we see the suffering. Even in our own family, we see it. My brother-in-law contracted the virus. He lives in Atlanta with his family, and really was sick for about a week, and then had to go to the hospital and was admitted to the intensive care unit. And there was a couple of days where we didn't know what was going to happen. And Danny's healthy. He's a 45-year-old healthy father of 7, and you know, all indications would be, why would he ever struggle with this? So there is a lot of unknown. And I think what the other thing as a committee, what we want to do is we want to acknowledge from a medical standpoint, and those of you guys who know me, I'm not a clinician, but I work with them all, so I sometimes I'll say what I hear them say. And one of the scary things is there's a lot we just don't know. The therapeutics we have today are not the therapeutics we were using, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, and in some cases 5 weeks ago. So we're getting better at treating this virus. I think that the primary thing that we're trying to do, though, is we want to make sure that we have the right data making good decisions. The other thing that we're trying to do is we want to make sure, as a group, that we have broad representation, not just from healthcare, but from business and schools and the community, so that the decision making is, and the recommendations that we have are broad-based and very well thought out. I think we'll be tackling some difficult subjects. Who to listen to. That's one. Do you listen to the CDC? Well, you can't choose to listen to the CDC today because they said something you like, and then tomorrow discount the CDC because they said something you don't like. And so we've got to work through how do we take the information that's out there and distill it into a good information set for the city of Nampa, because that's what we really care about. And we want Nampa people to make great decisions with the data that we have. So we've got our work cut out for us, and we're excited. There are other people we're going to be adding, but just know our primary focus is the data and to drive good decision making and reduce the fear that's in our community. No question, we got to get back to school. We always say it, we got to get back to school and work and play and all the things that we really enjoy doing. Because the other thing we got to keep in the back of our mind is flu season's coming. So everything we do today is going to be judged in some way about, well, what are we going to do in flu season, right? So masks, distancing, learning online, all the different things we do and we put in place today have a real effect on what is our reaction going to be and what are our strategies going to be for how to combat the flu that we know is coming in the fall. My mom always said, don't trade what you know for what you don't know. I think that's really important. When you mentioned we got to go back to school, we know the harm that's caused to kids when they don't go to school. That is undisputable. We know it. We should never trade that. And there are things and strategies we need to do now as a city to make sure that those kids are protected. So we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to add more people to the group. We have a small group right now. We met twice. And so as needed, or as you guys would want, we're happy to comment and to provide perspective of what we're working on, but we sincerely appreciate the opportunity and thank you for the time.
Ed, thank you. Are there any questions?
Mayor? Ed, you had mentioned who kind of the generality of the professions that were represented on this task force and said that you'd be adding to it. Are you going to be adding people just from the community, or do they need to have fancy initials behind their names?
Actually, we prefer people without fancy initials because usually they're the ones that roll up their sleeves. And so right now we have some gaps in terms of we'd like more representation from the business community. Today we don't have any teachers that are on our group. We don't have anybody really from the faith-based community. We think that would be an important group of people to have represented and to weigh in and help influence our recommendations.
May I follow up, please? How are those people being selected, and when do we get just to the common everyday taxpayer?
I'm not sure what you mean by get to the.
Well, I might speak to that. We have met twice with a group of just your common everyday taxpayer.
Oh, yes.
I
yeah.
met with them, you met with them. And so we will continue to look, Ed and I talked about pulling a gathering together of just some, including some of those people in a future meeting. So it is a point of discussion, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mayor? Yes. Ed and I have, well, we go back, I think, more than a decade now. We might be close to 2.
Probably, yeah.
He's older than I am. He's also a good baseball player, Rick. I appreciate it. Ed and I have had some conversations over the last week, and we spar and we have the best time. I get off my calls with Ed and I just laugh. But I'm so grateful for you stepping into this. We need to get our kids back to school. We need our economy to stay open. We need people to stay employed. There have been recommendations and guidance, not just from the CDC, but broadly around what it's going to take to do so. We are going to see consequences of COVID that will be long-lasting. And I would implore you to include Janelle Stauffer, a trauma therapist, on your team. She will be able to speak really well to the impact on our kids. And I think it's going to be really important that the system's not letting our kids down. We are, by not doing the simple things that we know work. I will do whatever it takes to keep our kids safe. I'll wear a mask, I'll stand on my head, I'll do whatever those of you who know me know it's true. And I implore all of you, these kids, we have a two-week reset with the schools to look at the data coming out. What I would say is, and Ed knows, the Southwest District Health, their data lag a little bit from the hospitals. So Ed and I talked about today's data. There's no intent to hide data. It's just, can people understand that census changes rapidly? It can change from 8 a.m., Ed knows that as an administrator, to 8 p.m. And so what people get in a moment can look different. And so how Ed can interpret that for people, I think, will be really important. I implore you all, our kids have to be in school. They're fed, they're nurtured, they're safe. They're learning. Let's do what it takes. It won't take long. We've seen it happen in other communities. It's incumbent on all of us. They don't get a choice. We do. Thanks, Ed, for all you do.
Mayor, can I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the only thing I would say is, because I forgot to mention this, the hospital, we are working with the hospitals, and we've requested information from the hospitals because we think that their data is an important set of information for our community to know. One of the complicating factors, of course, with the two health systems here, they're both very, very good, but they're systems. And so a lot of their data kind of gets washed into the larger perspective of their systems in the Treasure Valley, not just Nampa. So what we've requested is that they break that out for us, and that we actually have Nampa-specific information. Actually met today with Betsy Hunsiger, the president CEO of West Valley. Asked her the question, would she be willing to be transparent with the Caldwell data coming out of her health system? From our perspective at Salter, we have a clinic now, we opened it today in Caldwell, and so we will be transparent with that. We're very appreciative of Dr. Peterman with Primary Health. He's agreed to separate their data by city and be transparent with that. So really kind of what we're waiting for now is the two large health systems to weigh in with that as well. And this afternoon I met with Travis Leach, the president of Nampa St. Al's, and then Odette Bolano, the president of St. Al's in Idaho. Great conversations. They're very engaged and willing to work with us. So it's a process, it's iterative. You think getting data is really simple, but it takes work and it takes agreement, and there are politics and everything. So we're trying our best to work with all those things as well.
Mayor, follow-up?
Yes.
Just, I think, point of clarification, like Ed's trying to make. You heard early on from health systems that ventilator status, how many people are on a ventilator was a big determining point. But we're now finding, as Ed said, therapies are changing. They're now finding that proning and high flow oxygen and other treatments are more appropriate. So again, it's to make sure the data is relevant and that we're not giving data that confuses people. And like Ed said, what we said yesterday, now it doesn't look the same tomorrow, and people say we're not telling the truth. So I think that transparency is really important, but making sure that people understand that it does change. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, thank you so much. What's important, I think, for our city to know, and I want City Council to know, is that we're working diligently to provide trustworthy, transparent information to our citizens. That's the goal. When I ran for office, that's my commitment. It hasn't changed. It's not always easy to get it done. I appreciate Ed stepping up, and his leadership role has been critical to us moving this forward, so thank you. I'd like to ask Kirk Carpenter real quickly if he has anything that he feels like he would like to add. Kirk is serving as our emergency manager dealing with the COVID. Kirk, is there anything that you would like to add?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, I won't give you the same update that I always give you because it would sound very similar. You know, you're all well aware that we still have elevated cases. We've had some good news over the last couple of days as we start to see some downward trends, which is always a positive hope. But what I can tell you is exciting opportunity. I do get to sit in the room with the health advisor, talk through the data as well as identify gaps that they have in their group, and it's an honor to be in the room and to be a part of those conversations. I guess if I was going to say on anything of an update tonight, Mayor, would be to brag on our city's team. Mayor and Council, you have an amazing team that is doing things that are setting the pace for not just the county but the state of Idaho. Your finance team under Doug's Racine's leadership is doing fantastic things and setting in motion opportunity for us as a city to have protection, not just today, but far into the future. It comes with work from our IT department, from police and fire, and all those great teams are working hard to not just make sure today we're ready to respond and be good stewards to our community, but in the future, far into the future. Other than that, Mayor, I think that we just wanted to remind our council that we are working hard to get the right data and the right connections to our resources out to not just our local businesses and community partners and citizens, but we do work very well with our surrounding communities. And we have many efforts at play right now, whether it's long-term care facilities and caring for our most vulnerable population and identifying resources and identifying gaps, which one right now is staffing for all of our long-term care. So efforts at the state level to identify people who may be able to help in that realm. So I'm pretty proud to be a part of the City of Nampa's team and get to represent this team in many meetings. But the team at work in the offices in our city are doing amazing things, and I guess that's the one thing I would relay to our council is they are being well represented by the employees that they choose to have that represent our city.
Thank you, Chief Carpenter. I appreciate your comments. So I have moved the mayor council comment time to after this proclamation, which is what we're in, and I know Councilman Bauer has a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't enjoy talking about controversial things, but I was elected by the people, and I feel like I need to speak for them at this time, because I know the overwhelming majority of our citizens are very disappointed in the Nampa School District for shutting down school. And essentially, even though it's 2 weeks, you risk sports getting shut down for the fall before Boise School District, before West Ada has made that decision. I know I have my master's degree in health and human performance, so I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I know that I know this virus is very real. It kills people. I understand that. I know the elderly are most at risk. They're the ones, the sick, they're most at risk. I understand there's outliers where healthy people can die. A St. Luke's provider did die from COVID, and other people will die. And the data is clear, but the data is also clear that it's over 99.9% death rate. The death rate's going down. So to be objective, you have to look at both sides of the equation. But what about the second most vulnerable group? And that's our children. I've seen firsthand how our children have been impacted by the isolation. Why are we only concerned about the first group? Why are we concerned about our children? So when you make a decision like this and make a decision in the spring to shut down school, you impact this group as well. Lee Leslie is a friend of mine. He's the coach at McCall High School. He carried a lifeless boy out of his parents' house that was going to compete for a state championship. Why don't you talk to Lee Leslie or that boy's parents and see what they think about the shutting down schools, and if that was anything to do with it. In my own business, I had an employee's daughter was a victim on Instagram getting from a predator. The Nampa Police Department arrested this person. Thank you. You guys are awesome. This was during the beginning of COVID. So if this is happening in my 13 employees, what do you think it's doing in the 100,000? So, I'm a fighter, I swing, I'm not very political, and I'm drawing my line in the sand when it comes to our kids and things that I see, and this isn't right. Those that know my brother Danny, when he was 14 years old, he accidentally killed our father in a hunting accident. He was suicidal for years. He shot baskets so much he got carpal tunnel, had to have surgery in his wrist. School and sports saved his life. Okay, so let's think about our children, and let's really think about that vulnerable group, and to the majority of everyone that's really frustrated right now with the Nampa School District decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other council comments?
Mayor, I was going to go on. I'm not going to, but it's a totally different subject. And thank you, Councilman Bauer. I support you on that. COVID, let me just speak on COVID for a minute. It's terrible. But people like Ed Cassadine, Councilwoman Munchie, you're going to solve this for us. And you're going to solve it quickly. I believe that. I believe, and I could go on, but I want you to go ahead and research it, because we're forgetting about something that's even, to me, much more devastating. And that's what's happening in our division of our country, in our patriotism, and our love for this country. And I'm going to get probably torn apart, maybe by a newspaper or whatever, but this BLM organization, I'm not talking about BLM words, I'm talking about the organization is got a smiling face out there, but look into it. I've spent hours. Social injustice, it's doing nothing but tearing this country apart. And I could go on and give you examples. But I just am asking one thing. I just talked to a group of people last night. They had a prayer meeting. Now I'll probably become a little emotional. But this country's not, and I'm 66 years old. I never thought I'd say this, but I see a civil war possibly even happening. And we got to get on our knees. Not when the flag or the national anthem is playing, but to God. And if we don't start doing that, we're in trouble. And this COVID thing's kind of pushing everything that off to the side. And we're forgetting about the future of our children and our grandchildren that you're talking about. Because this thing is huge. We're kind of isolated here in Nampa. Boise, not so much. There's already a Black Lives Matter in Boise. And I want free speech. I'm not saying any of that or tearing any of that down. But we have got to really watch and protect our children and be praying for this community and for our days and years ahead. And I don't like to be a pessimist. But with God's help, He knows that we got to put it in His hands. So thanks a lot.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you. Thank you, Darrell.
Are there any other comments from council this evening?
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to respond to Councilman Bauer, if I might. The boy who was lost in McCall was the son of my classmate, so I do know that one. And every one of them is terrible. And that's why we're asking this community and everybody sitting up here to do what is recommended to knock this disease down. We can't go and blame the school if we won't do our part. We know what works. And if each of us will not do it, then we're at fault for keeping those doors closed. And Jacob, we have a task force that meets every Friday to decrease child abuse. If you want to be part of that, I welcome you. We have suicide prevention coalitions that Ed and I have worked on extensively. I invite you to be part of those. We need to be part of the solution, and that starts with us doing what it takes. We don't get it both ways. These kids, again, don't get a choice. If you'll wear a mask, if you'll distance, wash your hands, and we implore our community to do that, there's no reason these doors shouldn't open quickly. We can knock this down. But if we don't do what's recommended, then we're just as much at fault for locking those doors. The school is doing everything they can. It's an untenable situation right now. But if we won't do our part, we're to blame.
I do want to make a comment. I visited with Nikki Zog today, and we were looking at the stats. And I know there have been some recommendations that we should be moving and changing which stage we're in. And as there's discussion in other areas about closing, do we move back to a stage? And I just want to say that actually, it isn't because of bars that COVID has spread here. It isn't because of necessarily large gatherings. Our greatest exposure has been family members. It's been weddings, it's been funerals, it was 4th of July parties. Actually, we're seeing a little bit of reprieve right now, that we may be making headway in our numbers, and that is awesome. And so my recommendation is that we don't go back a stage. I do think, though, that we need to be considering when we do our big gatherings, that we really think twice about it, because it is an opportunity. And I have to say, I know a lot of people that have had COVID, and it's been from gatherings, and it's been from certain activities where you have a bunch of people together. And so you may have noticed in my proclamation, I acknowledge that face masks are not the end all. However, if they make a little bit of a difference and they help a little bit and 2 people wear them, then you've helped even more. And so I think that when we cannot distance, if we would, out of respect, especially, and this is to our community, when we go into a business, we have businesses that have people that are compromised, but they have to have jobs. And so that's why we encourage people to respect someone when they go into a business. And we've had some people that have been really nasty about not wearing masks when they go into a business. And you know what? We need to respect our businesses. And I think for anyone sitting here, I think we have a council, but whether or not they feel like masks are the answer, we'll respect others. And that is, we'll maintain distance. We'll be careful. If we're not going to wear a mask, then we need to distance ourselves. And we need to respect our businesses, because we need our businesses to open. We need, and that's, like I said in that proclamation, we got to get our businesses going. We need to get our economy going, and we need to get kids back to school. So we all need to do our part to do that, because we need to keep it all moving forward. You know, our tagline is a safe and healthy community where people prosper. Ultimately, that's where we want to go. But we need our kids, and I fully agree with what you're saying. We need our kids in school, because the abuse, domestic violence is up a little bit, the abuse of our kids, suicide. I know we've just had 2 youth suicides since COVID. But when our SROs, with our Nampa Police, provide the school resource officers within our schools, and I tell you what, they play such a key role in kids' lives. Sometimes kids don't have an encouraging word at home, but they can go to school and have somebody smile. And those school resource officers play a very, very key role. So I want to do a shout out and a thank you to them for the service they provide in our schools, because it's really, really important. Anyway.
Mayor, I'll just say, there's no chance that's where we're cutting as far as police. There's other municipalities that are cutting their school, that's the first thing they're cutting is school resource officers.
And we are not doing that. And thank you for mentioning that, because where you've got so many places that are cutting police budgets, this council has said, no, we won't do that. We support our police, and I think our community supports that. And I tell you what, I love our community. And you know what, one more thing, and that is the cool thing about Nampa that I love, and it happens even here at this bench, we may not always agree. And that's a good thing, because you need discourse in order to get to the right answers, but we respect one another. And I hope in our community that we can do the same. We may not always agree, but we respect one another. And I think that's what is special about Nampa, coming together as a community to say, how do we win on this one? We're going to. So thank you all.
Mayor, I'll say this too. I really appreciate your leadership in this effort.
Thank you.
You bringing people like Ed and others to the forefront. That means a lot to me. But then again, I have, like you say, I have my right to my own feelings and how I address certain things. Might not be the same way that others might. But I think there's that mutual respect on both sides. Being an architect, I'm used to being out kicking dirt clods around. I mean, we're out in the dust and dirt all the time, and the people that I work with out on job sites are just basically the salt of the earth type people. And so I respect them. I want them to continue to prosper and to keep the wheel of economy rolling, and that's what construction does. Because it goes all the way across all sectors, whether you're borrowing money or you're lending it, or you're selling products, or you're using a hammer to pound nails. Those people are important to our community. But as Jacob has said, and I've seen in my own life as being a coach, there are opportunities as a coach you have to mentor young people, and you can reach them in a way that their parents can't. Teachers have that same opportunity, and when you're depriving them of the opportunity to spend time with those kids, our community is built on interaction. And that's what I've so much appreciated over the years of being able to be involved in young men's lives and coaching them and being able to share with them in a way for a season some proper role model type behavior, helping them to become better leaders and to be better friends and better kids to their parents and better students in school. That's important that we have that opportunity again. We need to get back there sooner than later. And I appreciate what Jacob had to say. This is a very emotional topic for many. And I have family that's involved in education and in the business community. And it's important for us to keep this wheel going. So I appreciate what everything's been said, and I appreciate Ed coming forward, and I just applaud your efforts as mayor. Amen.
Thank you. So this has been a little bit of a family discussion tonight, not our normal, but you know what? We don't get to talk to each other as council members because we don't do meetings together. So the only time we get to have a conversation is really at the bench like this, to where we're all together. So thank you for your patience while we have the opportunity for the council to share their thoughts and actually to share and get to hear from each other. So thank you to everyone for giving that opportunity. So before we move on to Nampa residents wanting to speak, did everyone have the opportunity to share?
Mayor, I haven't said anything, but I just champion what everybody else said today. I agree with everybody, and let's move forward. Let's go on and get this done and make our community better.
Yes,
Yes.
I
Mayor?
agree. Yes.
I really want us to look at the data of the kids and just really, if we can try to get our kids back to school, even if the numbers are up, we got to get them back to school, or they're going to be at. I mean, the data says that they will be hurt. And to Gene, if I had time to come, I would. I coach multiple teams. I own my own business. My wife took a kid to Meadow Sports this morning. We're involved in these kids more than what anyone would know. Those that are close to me know. And most of these kids are not affluent kids. They're Hispanic kids, Victor. Athletic kids come from all sides of walk. So anyway, I guess I'm done with that, but I just really want us to do what we can to get our kids back to school, even if the numbers are up.
So Ed, thank you for being here because you just listened to what the council had to say, and I think that gives you a little bit of support to say, you know what, we want to get kids back to school. What can we do to get it done? So thank you so much, and don't feel like you have to stay. Yeah, you're welcome to.
Oh, I'm sure he wants to.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda are Nampa residents wishing to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item, and I'm sorry, I've got to open my computer again because it keeps going to sleep. So we have 2 people on the agenda this evening. I think we'll start with, the first person I have signed up is Irina Lanza. And Irina, are you here? Hi. So as you come forward, go ahead and say your name again and your address, and then tell us what you're here to speak about.
Hi, Council and everyone present. It's an honor to be here. I'm Dr. Irina Lanza. This is my fiance, Dr. Keenan Tarnowski. Do you want our home address or my office address?
Which you have one in here on Cornwallis
Way is our home address.
Okay.
Yeah, we live right here in Nampa. We met Councilman Rodriguez at my office grand opening last week. I just opened my chiropractic office on 1st Street last week, and we are so excited to be here. We just graduated chiropractic school in March. Keenan is actually from Canada, and I'm from Pittsburgh, and we are love chiropractic and love helping people. And we said, you know, where do we want to live? We had job offers in a lot of different cities, and everyone said, you know, you should move to where you want to retire. And we found Nampa, and we love it here, and we never plan on leaving. So we are just so excited to be here. I had a great office opening last week, and we're really excited to be here, and especially during these really difficult times. We're here to help the community. We want to make people healthier, and we're just really blessed.
Thank you and I'm sorry I missed it. I was out of town, or I would have been there.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I missed it, but welcome.
Thank you.
So Mayor, remind us of the address.
My
Your
office-
business.
Yes,
My office
you're
address-
not your address, your business address.
My business
You have a
address is-
fiance,
yeah.
we're not asking for you.
My business is Nampa Orthospinalogy Chiropractic Clinic, and it's at 1224 First Street South, Suite 304. So it's right down on First Street above Messenger Pizza.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
I
know
have a
that.
really nice office there, digital x-ray, and we're both specialized. We have hundreds of extra hours of additional training outside of school to be able to do what we do. So.
And our
Mayor Clay.
specialties are very different. So I'm at Whole Health Chiropractic, 16150 North High Desert Street. I work for Dr. Anthony O'Berty. He's been in the Nampa area with his office since, I think, 6 years ago. He moved here himself from California. And so I specialize mostly in pediatrics, developmental disorders in pediatrics, and then I like to specialize in athletes as well. We believe that everybody that gets adjusted and is in alignment can have a lower stress response to everything in their life, not just the stuff they're dealing with pain-wise or development-wise. So we like to focus on a preventative health care rather than reactive. And going through COVID, it's been very reactive. And we're trying to get people who come to see us to think more preventative for what comes after COVID, so that people are healthier long-term. And in a community that likes to be out with each other, that is huge, because everybody can keep each other accountable in the community.
Mayor Kling? Oh,
1224,
1224 First Street South, Suite
is it
304.
right next to the skylight upstairs?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. My new office.
That's where I started my architectural practice 27 years
That's
ago.
amazing. Well, I'm probably in your old office then.
You might be.
Wow.
Don't do too much searching, you may find some strange things.
You never know.
Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes,
Councilwoman Munchie.
thank you for coming. I got a text this morning at 7 in the morning, and I don't get up until about 9, but thank you anyway. But what is the other chiropractic service that you do that's really unique?
As of next week, I'm actually traveling to be certified internationally to treat animals for chiropractic. So mainly horses and dogs. We can also see cats as well. And I travel to your homes to do that, and I'll be internationally certified through the International Veterinary Chiropractic Association.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yes, and there's one more thing. Brad, would you stand up, please? I'd like to have you meet our captain of the police. Spinology is different than regular chiropractic services. So, Brad, this would be perfect for our firemen and our police officers. And one of these days, if you could form some kind of a couple of guys who went out there and just get a tour,
Yeah.
it would
Or
be
I would
awesome.
love to come speak to you guys, or you're always welcome. Like he said, what I do is orthospinology. It's a very specialized form of chiropractic. There's no popping, twisting, or cracking. We have digital x-ray and a specialized analysis. So I x-ray every patient before and after their adjustment, so I see exactly how it changed. There's no guesswork. It's all very scientific and very reliable, and we get phenomenal results. And my goal too is, I always say I want people out there talking about me rather than in there talking to me. So I want people to go out and live their lives and live healthy lives, which I love about this area is everyone wants to get outside and wants to be active, and I want to promote that. So eventually I want to become like your dentist, where you're only coming in for your checkups, and it's my goal to get you to that point as quick as I can.
Yes, and I think some of what the police officers and firemen do, as well as some of our other city employees, that they hurt themselves or they strain themselves and then don't take care of it. And then it also causes more problems.
Yes.
So if they knew who you are, where you are, it sure would be a blessing for us to help them get better. And I think as a young couple starting out a wonderful business, that's going to be a plus for you and us and for us as well. So Thank you. And you'll see Brad stand up again if he can and give you his card and go from there. Okay? Thank you.
Councilwoman Menchie.
Just welcome to the community, and I wish you decades of success until your retirement, and perhaps there'll be some adjustments for the canines in the future. High-stress job for those. Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome
thank
to
you
the
so much for
community.
having us. We're honored to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. So we have one other speaking opportunity, and this is Stuart Heidman. Stuart, are you here? I'm here. Hi, come on forward.
I'm Stuart Heineman. I'm with Farmers Insurance here in Nampa. I have lived here since 1981. So it's not quite forever, but it's been longer than I care to think about. In the grand scheme of things, I am sometimes an athlete. I participate in triathlons and those sorts of things. I was entered in 4 races this year. So Roby Creek, Sawtooth Relay, 3 Ironman races. The first year I ever qualified for the World Championships for the half Ironman. They canceled every one of them. Every one of them. So no races this year, and I understand even our Harvest Classic is going to change to maybe a virtual race. I asked the city council and some other folks, some folks I know on the city council, if I could encourage the city of Nampa to run a fun run at Christmas time, December 12th. And I'm putting some money behind this because I can tell you if you go to an Ironman race anywhere in the world, you spend money, lots of money. So John, if you would come up here. He says, this is one of those big checks. And I am making a donation to the Parks and Rec Department to put on a run on Centennial Golf Course on December 12th this year. And so John, you can show folks there. He says, that's about half of what I think I would have spent if I'd have gone to all those races this year. So I'm a farmer's person. I live here in Nampa. Well, I live just north of Nampa, but I live in an office over on Orchard and Midland. And I'm tired of not running. And I want the community to come out and run at Christmas time. I think we can make it safe. Instead of giving away t-shirts, we're going to give these little Gators try out there. Make sure people are, and we're going with some recommendations from Jeff over at the fire department. We're going to have a spaced start so that we're going to start people 5 or 10 seconds apart. And John has told me we are going to have 800 to 1,000 people out there running if we can put it on. So that's what I'm telling the council tonight. That check is real. There's one taped to the back there that you can actually spend. That check is real, and I want to run. I'm tired of not being able to compete. This is a fun run. It's not a race, but it's kind of like cyclists. If you get more than 2 of them together, there's going to be a race going on someplace in this deal. So there you go. Thank you very much.
I love your vision and your enthusiasm, so thank you. Do you want to take a picture?
I do.
Just turn around and there you go.
So
There you
we
go,
want to do
guys.
this.
Okay, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, make it look good. Thank you. Thank you. I have to say something about John also. He ran with my daughter when she graduated from Valley View High School. And they were on the cross-country team. And since then, of course, you're a real runner. She's just an engineer. But that's my 3 minutes. I apologize. We both qualified this year for the World Championships in the half Ironman, which was in New Zealand. And it's killing me. So we're going to run in December. Thank you.
Oh, hold on,
Thank
hold
you.
on. The weather will be the same, too, as New Zealand in December
Yeah, the
12th.
weather, no, it will be summer in late November in New Zealand when we were supposed to race. Yes.
Mayor Kling, so I met Stuart, and he's being humble right now. He's rated number 100 and something in the world for
Yeah.
your age bracket, right?
For the guys over 60, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so, and his whole family runs then as a triathlete.
Yep.
So I tried to run with him last December, and I walked 2 miles, and he ran, I don't know how many miles, but it was way too many. 7 months later, I had a heart attack.
That was not my fault.
That was not my, but thank you for the $5,000 for this beautiful run. It's going to be not just a run, it's going to be a walk
Yep.
for children and for.
Three distances, 1 mile, 3 miles, 6 miles. We have some local businesses that are going to supply the Gators. We have some local businesses that are going to provide us with some steel drums so we can put firewood in and separate people out so they can stay warm if it's cold out there. Nobody knows what December 12th is going to be, right? If you do know, call me. I would love to know what the weather's going to be. But we're going to prepare for snow and wind and everything else. And Victor knows that I've swum in water that's 42 degrees to race. I've run in Minneapolis when it's 25 below zero. So I'm going to show up on December 12th. Hopefully a bunch of other people will be as crazy as I am.
I'll try to be there with you.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
we will be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, farmers.
Yes, farmers is involved too.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda, we have 10 minutes before public hearings. And so agency and commission reports, we have none. Staff communications, we have none. So let's move to item 5.1 on the agenda. This is to authorize the Nampa Police Department to apply for the Byron JAG grant. And is there a motion or do we need a presentation?
So move.
So moved. Second, third.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call?
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5.2 is the resolution for appropriation of funds for the FY21 budget to call for the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 5.3 is to authorize the mayor to sign a sidewalk improvement reimbursement agreement for modifications along First Street, if I can talk south, between Wall Street and 13th Avenue.
So move.
Second.
Are there any questions for Robin? Discussion?
Mayor just may explain, just so, it's in our packet, so we've read a lot of these things. So I think sometimes people wonder why
It's quick.
myself and others. Yeah,
I appreciate the work that council does in reviewing your packet.
There was
And
only 800 pages this time.
861.
Oh, 51.
61.
61, there you go. And this is really exciting. So anyway, if there's no further discussion, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
So the next item on the agenda, we do have some people here present to do a brief presentation. And this is the adoption of the Historic Preservation Plan. And I think Jordan is here and Sherry Freemuth is here. And so we'll let you get started and give us a brief presentation on this Historic Preservation Plan. And I do want to start by saying thank you both for your commitment and for your work. It is greatly appreciated. Jordan, thank you. You've been at this a long time. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a lot of great heritage in Nampa, and we're really excited to be here. And we're also responsible for a lot of those pages in that extra thick packet. So because you've already read them, we're going to go through pretty quickly. I know you've got a full agenda, so we're going to need kind of the high level because I think your detailed review is going to give you a lot more information than I'm going to be able to cover. Carrie is also on the line here if we have any specific questions as it pertains to the packet itself. As Mayor said, I'm Jordan Yankovic. I'm chair of the Arts and Historic Preservation Commission. Carrie is our preservation consultant, and Morgan, I think, is also available or in person, who is in our Nampa City staff representation here. The purpose in attacking the preservation plan this year is first to update our outdated plan. And I'm going to pull this up. Can I screen share from here, or do we feel comfortable looking at your paper packets with the presentation?
You can screen share.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Sorry, everyone. I need to get my Zoom meeting city council hat on. And this just means I'm going to go extra fast. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. And this again is in your packet, so if we have any kind of lag, refer to the paper version here. So tonight I'm going to give you a brief overview of this and kind of our next steps as well as our goals and objectives. As I said, we are updating the outdated version, which is from 2008, as we are continually moving and history is continually being created. And it might jar some folks to know that buildings from 1970 are now within the historic 50-year period. So I'll let that sink in for everyone. And then we funded this process through our CLG grant and engaged Sherry to help us write this. The main goals here were, of course, to update the plan and then as well as become compliant with the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office requirements. We also wanted to address a full range of issues surrounding heritage in Nampa, mostly through understanding our own historic context. It's easy to throw around words like historic building and history, but without understanding what historic moments, what big events shaped a community, it's hard to understand what shaped buildings. So a lot of focus went into that, and I think there's some great work in this preservation plan for that. And then we also wanted to get public input and see what buildings, what priorities, what interests came from the public as they think about historic preservation and Nampa heritage. And then we developed historic preservation plan strategies to support the management of these historic resources. A quick overview of our timeline. We started this in October of 2019, and we are seeking adoption into the Nampa Comprehensive Plan here in August. In review of our public outreach efforts, we held a series of meetings in which we provided various opportunities for input, including prioritizing just basic input, as well as identifying buildings and mapping them of areas that were of interest, bringing to people's minds as far as what constitutes a historic building or areas that they think that would be interesting to them. This is an example of one of those pieces of data. There's more in the historic preservation plan, but the question was about prioritizing aspects as they relate to Nampa's heritage, and two that arose to the top here were retaining community character and creating opportunities for economic development. Here are a few images of buildings that the public identified as historic buildings or buildings that they thought were interesting or should be looked into more as historic properties. And then these images are ones that the Arts and Historic Preservation identified as additional opportunities. It's very easy for us to look at our downtown core because we do have so many great buildings, but there are a lot of other opportunities, including historic neighborhoods and even Amalgamated Sugar, which are, great, interesting snapshots of moments in time and have some real natural beauty to them, are worth looking into. Overview of the chapters within the preservation plan. Again, you guys have reviewed this and there's a lot to it. I do want to call your attention to the section in Chapter 4, the historic portion B here, the historic resources and context statements. This is really the groundwork for understanding what makes buildings and developments and the way that Nampa grew significant as we understand how irrigation changed the city and changed the developments around us, and why that makes certain buildings significant and how they represent that. So that's one that I think is worth extra looking at, just to give you the flavor of Nampa. And then our preservation guide and goals, and of course the appendices, which have a lot of great information in them. Our overarching goals and objectives are first to understand and document our historic buildings and sites. If we don't know where they are or what they are, we can't really preserve them. So that's a very basic step one. Step two would be preserving and protecting, as well as enhancing our historic buildings and sites. Sites are including non-structures. And then we also want to strengthen the operation and administration of the Arts and Historic Preservation Commission. If we can run efficiently and effectively, we can assist citizens, we can provide resources, and we can just be more effective generally. And then we also want to increase public awareness and partnerships. We have so many great buildings and great opportunities in our city and our community, and have people not know they're there, that sometimes feels a little like we're letting somebody down. So to be able to increase the awareness and get the public more involved in living preservation. Within these items here, here's we're delving down into some strategic objectives within those overarching goals: understanding and documenting, developing context statements, doing our own local register to track our own buildings for our own purposes, preserve and protect, growing preservation as a tool. I'm not going to read all these because I know we're pressed for time. We want to continue to strengthen us on operational administrative side, and then again, reaching out with the public awareness. In your packet, there is a really great implementation strategy table that shows timelines as well as responsible parties who we will be interfacing with in these efforts. In the immediate terms, we of course would love to see this adopted into the comprehensive plan as step one. We would like to conduct semi-annual historic preservation plan reviews, present annual reports to council, join partner groups, and share training opportunities. And then in some short-term goals, estimate about 1 to 3 years, meet with landmark property owners to urge preservation, prepare a demolition review ordinance, seek funding sources, pursue context studies, and prioritize annual survey projects. And I'll skip through these again, tight on time, but it's all in there. And for next steps, we are asking that this be signed and adopted into the comprehensive plan. Going forward, the Arts and Historic Preservation Commission is looking forward to our 2020 CLG grant, which we are assisting the Hasbrook House for nomination onto the National Register of Historic Places. So that's really exciting because it's a gorgeous landmark building that I think we all know, and to have the opportunity to be on the National Register is very, very exciting. And then, of course, we want to continue to collaborate and strengthen our role. Thank you for listening to my very quick, I know I'm a fast talker, my very quick presentation, and thank you to Morgan, Beth, and Christy, and as well to Sherry, who is here if we have any questions.
First of all, that was amazing. Jordan, you did an outstanding job. I know there is a lot of work that has gone into that you quickly covered, and I just want to say thank you. That was excellent.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you lending your leadership and expertise to this project.
And so thank you so much.
So, Council, do we have any questions?
I just have a real thanks, and then also thank our two council members that serve on this committee, Councilman Haverfield and Councilwoman Levi, for their work on this.
Thank you for sharing that. Agreed.
Yes,
thank you.
And we miss seeing everyone in person. It's not fun.
So is there any discussion or questions or a motion to approve, and so we can move forward?
I'll let Sandy make that motion.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we authorize the mayor to sign a resolution for the adoption of the 2020 City of Nampa Historic Preservation Plan.
Second.
Thank you both. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Bruner,
Yes.
Lecce,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Levi.
Yes.
Thank you all for your great work. We appreciate it, and we just look forward to the future. And so we appreciate your work in preserving our community and the history. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so 5-5 will be after public hearings, and right now it is a few minutes after 7, and we are going to move into the public hearing portion of our agenda. And I think we only have a couple public hearings. We have, I think, 24 new business items tonight, so we have a little bit of work at 23, excuse me. With one removed, it's down to 22, so we have a little bit to go on new business. But right now, we'll move into public hearings. Our first public hearing is continued from the July 6th council meeting. This is the annexation and zoning to RS6, which is single-family residential, 4,000 square foot lot at 0 and 406 West Dooley Lane. These are parcels 29241 and 292411011. This is for a small single-family home development for Mason and Associates. And so in the public hearing portion of the agenda, we start with the applicant, then we will move to a staff report, and then we will move to public testimony. And I think I don't remember the number right off the top of my head, but we've got a few people that would like to testify, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that are currently signed up. So we'll start with the applicant. Is our applicant here this evening? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your name and address. And
this is 924 3rd Street South in Nampa. So we're here tonight to ask for annexation and zoning of a parcel of property that's 2.76 acres that's on the north side of Dooley Lane and directly east and south of Canyon Street. So we've kind of got a unique situation where we're surrounded by 3 roads, or 2 roads that surround the property. And we're enclaved And so we've asked for an RS4 zone because of the shape and the confines of the property. We believe we meet the requirements of the 2040 comp plan. The neighbors have expressed concerns about the traffic, and traffic studies in Nampa have a threshold that is required before a traffic impact study is required. That threshold is 100 vehicle trips per peak hour and 1,000 vehicle trips per day. And we are estimating 10 vehicle trips per peak hour and less than 100 vehicle trips per day with our concept plan the way we have it laid out right now. That concept plan you can see right on the screen is for the existing farmhouse to remain. That's on Dooley. And then the remaining lots would front a cul-de-sac type road into Canyon Street. And with that, I would stand for any questions. I think the owner may have some more to talk about with this concept plan, but.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Quick question, Will. Had you considered, or what is the difference as far as density for an RS6 versus the RS4?
The density wasn't the issue for us. We were looking at the RS4 because of lot compatibility issues. I think when staff looked at the infill development ordinance tonight or this morning, we found out that we probably meet an RS6 zone in an infill development type situation because every one of those lots is greater than 6,000 square feet.
Well, that was my question, because you've got RS6 around you to the northwest and to the south. It seems like an RS6 would be more compatible than an RS4, but I was just wondering why you chose RS4 over the RS6.
And at the time, it was because of the compatibility issues that we thought we were going to have, where they would look at sizes of lots and say you have to be 80% of the size of the lot across the street from you.
Oh.
Not looking at the infill ordinance as closely as staff did, and realized that some of that is in an infill development is not applicable. We're okay with an RS6 if that's what the council decides to move forward tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So you mentioned briefly that the owner may have some comments. Is there someone else that would like to speak as the
Yes.
applicant?
I think, I'm not sure if he's signed up or not, but yes, he is here. Keen is here.
Okay. I think as far as, since he is an applicant, unless there's a problem, I think it would be great for the owner to actually have an opportunity to
I
also,
agree.
as applicant.
If there's no other questions.
Are there any
for
other
me.
questions for Mr. Mason? Okay, and then as far as you probably are aware, the process, you will have the opportunity to come back at the end of public hearing. So take notes to those things you hear so that you have opportunity to provide response at the end of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So is our owner here? Would you like to comment? And thank you for coming forward and stating your name and your address, and then share with us what you would like us to know.
I'm not used to speaking into the mask, so I'm Keen McCadhead. I own J. Keen Enterprises, the owner of the property. The issue with RS4 versus RS6 was what Will said. It was really.
Do you want to you can take your mask off.
Okay.
If you,
That would be
typically
more
we don't
comfortable, so.
have the podium there because actually but
Thank
you
you.
can take your mask off since you're within.
So the issue was lot compatibility. There are restrictions on the property. It's sloped, it's small with what we're going to give to the city with buffers, right of way, et cetera. We're really limited with what we can do. So the goal was not to, there was a rumor going around that we were going to build 4,000 square foot lots and 30 units, and I heard one person even say 100 units. That could not be further from the truth. The goal here is to build exactly what you see, and we'll get to that in the plat phases. But so that was the issue initially, was lot compatibility. We discovered in the staff report this morning and through conversations with Doug that that is not really an issue anymore. So at this point, what Will said is true. If the city would like to grant RS6, then we'll accept that and be thankful. So, I'm not Corey Barton. I'm not Hubble Homes. I'm not building, 750 homes on massive swaths of land. This is what I've been envisioning for a while, and I don't want to do just massive subdivisions. So if whatever it takes to build that is what we're after at this point. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Okay, I don't see any at this time.
Okay.
But as mentioned, you two can visit and
And
at the
I forgot my
conclusion-
address. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
You want me to state that now?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
2101 South Plateau Drive, Nampa, 83686, and my name is Keen McCadden.
Thank you, Keen.
Thank you.
How do you spell your last name?
It's an interesting, that one's hard to say over the phone for sure. MCHADDAD.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Appreciate you coming forward, and then if we have further, at the conclusion, I'll let
you
you
for the
guys talk about
opportunity. I appreciate it.
response. Thank you. Okay, at this time, staff report. And is Doug doing our staff report this evening? And Doug,
I am.
there, hi Doug.
Hi, Mayor. How are you?
Good, I was looking around for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Critchfield, I'm Principal Planner, and thank you, Mayor Kim.
So some information about the site. A lot of this has already been expressed about its location and size. The zoning for this on the north and the south sides is all RS6 zoning. It's to the east side is county zoning, and to the west is RS as well. The lot sizes, even though the zoning is an RS6 zone, the lot sizes within those zoning districts are very different. The lot signing at the Wycliffe Estates to the south are much smaller lots, and the Bay Hill subdivision to the north are larger lots, but they're all within that RS6. The comprehensive plan for this is this lot sits within a medium density residential, and it's surrounded on the north, east and west side, and then the south side is low density residential land use setting. The requested proposal to RS4 or RS6 both fit within the medium density residential land use setting. This is considered to be an infill development because it is an enclave parcel. And as a result of that, there are certain provisions in the Nampa City Code for an infill development subdivision. We'll talk about that in just a moment. These are the utilities. This is serviced by utilities to the site with an 18-inch sewer on South Canyon, 12-inch water main on West Dooley Lane, and an 8-inch pressure irrigation on West Dooley. Access would be from South Canyon Street. That's the preferred access that the City Engineering Division requests as well. This is a view of the site looking from the corner of Northwest Dooley, or of West Dooley and South Canyon Street, looking to the northwest to the property. It's largely agricultural, and it has some existing structures on the site. So the applicable codes for this project would be the establishment of land uses found in Chapter 10 or Title 10, Chapter 3(2), and also in Title 10, Chapter 8 in the single-family residential zoning district, specifically to answer Councilmember Haberfield's question about the density. In the RS4, the density maximum dwelling units per acre is 9.18, and in the RS6, it's 7.26 dwelling units per acre. And the special provision that was talked about this evening is found in 1020, Title 10, Chapter 27 for special subdivisions and developments. This does qualify as an infill development. It's entitled to plat substandards lots as a result. The minimum size lot would be 2/3 of that zoning district. So in this case, a 4,000 square foot lot, the development would be entitled to do so if it were to be zoned RS6. The infill subdivision also would enjoy immunity from having to align with the lot sizes surrounding the subdivision. And these are all provided in the code, and in your staff report, it states specifically where in the code that is stated. And then finally, the subdivision would be required to transfer it in the case of a development of a lot that's smaller than 6,000 square feet. The difference between the lot size, the smaller lot size, and 6,000 square feet would have to be platted as open space, as common open space. And the code goes on further to describe how that open space would be then utilized. If the council decides to zone this property RS6, then the applicant would be able to plat 4,000 square foot lots, but would be required to transfer the remaining square footage to common open space. If the council decides to zone this property RS4, then that transfer requirement would not be applicable. They would be able to plat 4,000 square foot lots without any common open space requirement. We've received quite a bit of correspondence. As you see by your staff report, it's a large staff report. We've had some comments from the public agencies. Primarily, there was no opposition or violations to be concerned with. The Boise Project Board of Control has noted that there are some valid water rights and irrigation ditches that cross the property, and that those need to be preserved and protected by an easement. So we've placed that in the conditions. From the general public, we've received several letters and emails, correspondence, both supporting and in opposition to the project. One and maybe two were neutral. And additional letters were received after the issuance of the staff report, and they've been distributed to the city council members by the city clerk's office. So the recommended findings for this project are listed in your staff report. Of note, number 4, the Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission recommended to the Nampa City Council that the property be annexed and zoned to RS6 in order to better align with the surrounding zoning area. So it's the proposed RS4 zoning or the recommended RS6 zoning. It does conform with the comprehensive plan. And so it's a decision of the council as to which way to go with the zoning. And the conditions of approval, again, are written in your staff report, mostly having to do with some engineering comments, the comments by the Board of Control, and any other city policies or standards that may apply, and any other conditions that may be levied by the city council. And so with that, I'll be able to take any questions if the council or the mayor has any questions at this time.
Mayor Sling. Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Doug, would you go back to where it says RS4, RS6 explanations?
Yes.
Yeah,
this one?
passed it.
Right here.
One more. Right there, okay. So here we have an RS4 that would require 4,000, that would allow a 4,000 square foot lot. And then under the RS6, the thing is substandard lots, minimum 4,000. So you're getting the same thing. Only the one difference is that they have to have a common space. So the lots will be exactly the same under RS4 and RS6. And I think that is probably, I mean, I'm even wondering whether this is the correct zone for 4 or a 6 for that small piece of property. Do you have an explanation for that, or do you have another zone that might better fit this?
Well, Councilmember Rodriguez and Mayor, so the difference would be is that the density for this lot, if it was zoned RX6, the density would have to remain at an RS6 level. The applicant could not place more lots on the property than the RS6 zone would allow. And so what we would end up with is more open space. And the code goes in to some detail about what that open space should look like, in that a percentage of it needs to be usable, or I think the code states that it's open space that is space that's, I can't think of the term for it, but it's usable open space, something that maybe have some recreational elements for it. Whereas if it was zoned RS4, the applicant could go in and maximize the density on that lot at an RS4 level, which again is at 9.18 dwelling units per acre, whereas the RS6 is at 7.26 dwelling units per acre. So roughly on this size of a lot, the difference would be about 4 or 5, potentially 4 or 5 lots.
Okay, and I'll follow up, Mayor. And also the other concern is that in this infill lot, there's going to be irrigation going through this. Well, that's going to reduce the space for those lots, right?
Yes, Mayor and Councilman Rodriguez, the easement there would have to be an easement placed, and so that the applicant would not be able to, or the builder would not be able to build over that easement, over that configuration. I don't have a drawing of where that easement goes. I apologize to the mayor and council. I don't have that information, but it does limit where things can be built on these lots, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have some more, but I want to hear testimony first. But thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Levi?
Mayor, thank you. Doug, excuse me, Doug, I meant to ask the applicant, but I wanted to see it again on my own eyes. Lot number 4 in the bottom right-hand corner, how is that accessed?
Let me go back up to that graphic here. So lot 4. Mayor, Councilmember Levi, I believe that would be accessed off of Canyon Street as it is currently.
So Doug, this is Rodney. This is where the original farmhouse is, and it would be accessed off of Dooley, not Canyon Street.
I mean, I apologize, Dooley. Yes, I apologize.
Follow up. I'm a little bit confused. I was kind of whispered that it wasn't going to be developed and the access is going to be off of Canyon or Dooley, which I can't remember what you just said.
Dooley.
So off of Dooley. So will the house, how's it going to be situated? Excuse me, the chemicals, sanitizers burn my throat. How's it going to be situated as far as it going to look like part of the subdivision? Is it going to have its back to the road? What happens there?
So Mayor and Councilman Levi, I would have to ask the applicant about the fencing and the other elements to this. I don't know what that would look like.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have you at the end of the hearing come forward and answer those questions, but that is an existing structure that is already there, so it isn't anything new.
Mayor Kling.
Councilman, yes.
Doug, so the 2.76 acres, does that include that lower corner lot that Councilwoman Levi just spoke to?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, it does.
Okay, how large of a lot is that then?
The existing lot or the proposed lot? I'm
The existing lot as it's being retained in the size shown.
That existing lot, I have that graphic up, is 1.47 acres.
So it basically it's pretty much almost half of the 2.76, or is it in addition to the 2.76?
So Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, that is that acreage is part of the 2.76.
Okay, to follow up with what Councilwoman Levi was stating then, if it's being part of the factor of the 6,000 square feet, if we were to go with an RS6, then the improvements made on that lot are crucial to this development. Then it can't be separate and separated. It needs to be developed along with the balance of those lots to provide the tot lot or whatever it would be for use by those landowners.
Mayor and Council, this is Rodney again.
Yes, Rodney.
Doug, I'm sorry to jump in here, but I think maybe some of the confusion here is that the parcel that exists is much larger than it's going to be in the end. So it will be split off, and the ultimate result of that parcel will be 13,482 square feet, much smaller than it is right now.
Okay, so again, Mayor, I'm sorry. So Rodney, what you're saying then is they can meet the requirement of a 6,000 square feet, whether each of those lots constitutes that. There is provisions for common space that can be developed so that it would be a benefit to an RS6 type of a development.
Yeah, you can see the landscaping to the south up against Dooley Lane and to the north against South Canyon Street. That is that common space they're going to be using.
Okay, so it would be on the perimeter, not internal.
That's correct.
That is this again. So you know this isn't in our packet, so we can't pull it up on our laptops.
So Mayor, I'm struggling. I was never a mathematician. I'm struggling with the dimensions that this map is showing. So the existing property, which we're going to keep the farmhouse, et cetera. I know the applicant probably could answer this. So where on this map, what is this? These are the 10 lots besides that, correct or not?
No, Councilmember Brunner, this is both parcels. This is the entire development. This is all 2 point, yeah.
So I need to know where actually the existing property, I thought it was just that number 4, but that's not the case that from what I'm hearing now. So where is the existing property? What is it? If it's over half of that, I'm not understanding.
So if you look at lot 5, there's a faint line that runs up on the east side of lot 5 all the way up through lot 10. And that is the property line on the east side. And then there's a west parcel as well with the what looks to be like a shop that's in the middle of what will be the cul-de-sac. That's kind of the beginning of the west side of that parcel. So the building in question that we're talking about, the farmhouse, is over on the east side of lot 4. You can see a small structure there. That's the east side of lot 4. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, what they're saying is that originally it was half of that, which was the 1.47 acres, but they're going to split the 1.47 acres.
Okay,
and it will no longer be that.
So that's what I needed clarification. Yeah. So the existing is still part of that lot 4 that's being shown in this diagram.
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other further questions for Doug Critchfield before we move to public testimony?
Mayor, thanks.
Yes.
Doug, again, to follow up then on the point that I was making, so lot 4, what's left of it, will be factored into the full development and meeting the provisions of whatever zone we give it, if it's an RS4, an RS6, or something else. It'll be a part of that computation, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If there are no further questions, we'll move into public testimony, and then we'll come back and have further clarifying questions for both staff and the applicant after public hearing. And so we do have 6 people signed up, and they're not signed up in order of in favor or opposed, and this is our new way of doing things on this Excel spreadsheet. And I think I'm just going to take them in the order they're signed up. So it's going to be random whether they're in favor or opposed. I'm not going to do them all together as we used to do. The first person I have signed up is Angie Cellular. And Angie, while you come up, I'm going to read your address. We do have it down at 924 3rd Street South, Nampa. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Angie, I'll let you correct the pronunciation of your last. If I see that you're speaking in favor of.
Yes, it's
Okay.
Cuellar.
Thank you.
Yes, Angie Cuellar, and the 924. And I'm speaking in favor of this project. I'm from also where I work at Mason Associates, and we believe that this annexation and zoning, we were working with the RS4 assumption until, like this morning, we learned that the RS6 with the infill would also meet our needs. But what I wanted to address was the neighbor concerns, all the letters. They were talking about traffic, which is a legitimate concern, but also has been addressed by the city engineer. No need for a traffic study. The engineer from Mason Associates, he went through again with the city of Nampa's standards. There's no need for a traffic study. But then we have the concerns from the neighbors that are more troubling to me, like it will increase crime, it will adversely affect the integrity of our development, it will decrease our property values, and it will decrease the quality of our homes. And I find those really troubling since in 2016, the Department of Justice, together with the Department of Housing and Development, released a joint statement that said, I quote, and I quote, "When enacting or applying zoning or land use laws, the state and local governments may not act because of fears, prejudice, stereotypes, or unsubstantiated assumptions that the community members may have about the prospective residents." The joint statement goes on to further give an example that denying a zoning approval that meets the zoning and land use requirements because of community fears over the increase in crime or lowering of property values violates the Fair Housing Act. And I just wanted to address that because there was things mixed in those letters that had absolutely nothing to do with legitimate concerns. They were based on stereotypical assumptions of smaller lots. And we believe that smaller lots and smaller homes do not equate smaller character or smaller integrity. And we would generously accept, we would like the RS4, but we would generously accept the RS6 with the infill and any recommendations by council. And I know it's not obviously going to be the most popular decision here today, but we believe it to be the right one to vote for the approval of this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person that is signed up is Dawn Christensen. Dawn, are you here? Thank you. Dawn, I have your address is 3011 South Island Drive, Nampa. You're a citizen?
Yes.
Thank you. And I forgot to say at the beginning, but she was within the 3 minutes. We all have 3 minutes. And so if you get it 3, I'll let you know.
Okay. I wanted to speak real quickly to the drawing that's on the board. This is the third iteration that we've received as local citizens regarding this project. Every time it comes up, it changes to adapt to whatever it wants to be. We don't know what the plat development's going to look like, so we just have some concerns about what the long-term picture is going to look like. I want to read a little bit from your comprehensive plan real quick, since I only have 3 minutes. That it must have in order to have a fit in the community, housing must be well designed and appropriately set into a site. It must have appropriate setbacks, variation in fenestration, architectural interest, well-designed streetscapes, open space, gathering areas, abundant landscape, adequate parking, and other features that blend it into the fabric of the community. The community that we live in that area, is not against development. We're supportive of this project. Having the right fit is what we're looking to do. The issue with traffic, it is a concern. And I think it's a concern for the city because even though it's a small development, if you look at all the building that's going on up in Greenhurst and Midland and Locust, the cumulative effect of all of those developments is going to have a severe impact, even though they may be smaller than 101,000 traffic per day, but the cumulative impact long-term needs to be taken into consideration. When you think in terms of RS4 versus RS6, I'll give you an example. You've already approved for an RS4 over on Maryland and Midland. I spoke to the Planning Commission about this in terms of it being similar to speculative zoning. That's a good example. That got approved by to RS4. It was purchased at $360,000. It's now for sale for $650,000. And the only thing they've done is remove some buildings, done a little bit of work on the old farmhouse, and now they're waiting for their profit. So I want to be cautious as you move forward with using RS4 on all the infills or enclave properties, that you're not creating an unjust situation for fair and affordable housing, because profit is not the only motivation for development. In terms of what we learned today, at the Planning Commission, there was no talk of this 1027-4 with the Planning Commission and the differences that would apply to an enclave or an infill. So, and even from my perspective, I wouldn't have been supportive of RS6, I would have been looking at RS7 or RS8 because of the differences in the percentages that you could do with this project. So we're supportive of the project, but we also want to see some conscientiousness in terms of what is the long-term picture. There's other empty properties in this area, and what would it look like if, are you setting a precedent? So I want to thank you for your time and appreciate, the opportunity to speak to you today.
That was exactly 3 minutes. My goodness, you practiced that well. Thank you so much. Mr. Michael Boyer at 516 West Bay Hill Drive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I was kind of impromptu. I wasn't planning to speak today, so hopefully I'll get into 3 minutes here with just a few things. Again, to reiterate what Don had mentioned, we are not, in the Bay Hill community that lives adjacent next door to this proposed project, we are not against the project development. We actually encourage it. We are for them developing that underdeveloped property. I think that would actually be an improvement. Again, our concern, as I emailed all of you earlier about, is the amount of homes. And it's not to, I know that you talked about fair housing and all that, and that's very well, I understand that. It's all considerable. My concern isn't that so much as the resources availability, because despite what you say about traffic impact, traffic engineer impact, try crossing from Dooley across 12th Avenue to go to D&B or make a left turn. There have been several near misses of accidents on there and several accidents. As well, you'll just be sitting there for a very long time in traffic, backed up, waiting to cross there. There are no traffic controls except for the two-way stop signs on either side of Dooley. So there is a consideration. Like Don mentioned, we will have more traffic with all the cumulative effect of other traffic there. There are other effects of how much common area they have to utilize for their residents and their community versus how much will be spilled over into our common areas that we pay for, that we spend a lot of money in HOA dues for, that we spend a lot of money in taxes for, to pay for. Not that we want to prohibit anybody, but will we have to then incur the cost of cleaning up garbage or what have you, or any other impacts spilling over to what I have to say is like a park areas within our community? These are concerns. Again, I'm for it. I'm encouraged by Mr. King, Mr. Mason's presentation that they're not talking about multi-level housing, because I think that would be extremely not beneficial to the future residents. And we have to consider, you guys are our representatives for all of us citizens here where we live, but not just for now. You guys are the stewards for future generations of Nampa citizens, and what the impacts will that be down the road. So I'm asking you to please at least consider more studies to make sure that we're doing the right thing and everybody benefits, and if it's a win-win situation, that would be the most beneficial for everybody, and that's what I would like to see. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Mayor Kling.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Quick question
Councilman.
for you. I was surprised that Bay Hill's an RS6.
Yes.
And I was going to ask the prior individual that came up, but then he kind of answered it, saying that he wouldn't go along with an RS6. Why would you impose a larger or a different standard to an adjacent property development?
Me
than where you
personally, I
currently
would
live?
not.
Okay.
Me personally, not. I think an RS6 would be appropriate at the minimum.
Yeah, and just in the testimony that I've heard so far, it would easily fit within that, and with the buffering around the perimeter, that screens you, and then Canyon Street, as it it's basically a separate street that bypasses Bay Hill anyway. It's not going
Well,
really through Bay
it's on
Hill.
the outskirt perimeter, and it is an access to one of our gates
Yeah.
on the backside.
Right, but
the
it's not
only
going
access.
through Bay Hill. I guess that was my,
It's not going through Bee Hill, but it goes around the access to the backside.
all right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next person that we have is Jared Keene. That was you, so you've gone ahead and spoken?
You probably will.
You will be at the end.
You will.
Well, you will at the end, so we'll put you at the end and we'll let you finish. And then Jeff, you spoke. Or Jeff, no, you didn't. That was your, okay, who's, no, I guess you have not. Are you the dad? Okay, you know, it's really risky to even suggest it, but I was thinking, I was looking at that last name, so there we go. Okay, so, and Jeff, we've got you at 406 West Dolly Lane, Napa, is that correct?
I live at the property in question,
Okay.
yes, and I cut my own grass there. Yes, so I'm here to speak in favor of the project, not just because I think it fits the community, but I hope to live there still, even after we build these homes. I'm actually hoping that my kids that live in Nampa will actually join me there as well. I have 6 kids and a few grandkids and maybe more on the way. So yes, if I was to receive the notice that maybe went out, I might be a little in shock too, thinking, what's going on with the zoning? But this is what we're hoping to have. And I stand before you humbly asking, how do we get there? If it's not RF4, maybe it's RS6. I don't know. But this is what we have envisioned, and we think it fits the community, and that's where I want to live.
That's pretty awesome.
Any questions? I'm here for you.
I think that what I've heard is that the adjustment that's taken place has been in response to the concerns that you've heard.
Okay.
Is
Thank
that
you.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions? Thank you so much.
thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Rochelle Martin, are you here? Hi, Rochelle. Okay, so I've got you at 439 West Island Court, Nampa. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And our property is fairly close to that. I mean, because that all kind of winds around. And once again, we don't oppose this whole project. I mean, a raccoon lived there that tried to kill the cat, and I mean, it's all a big mess. But we really just oppose the RS4 and the RS6, what is it, the 1027-4? That's really that's kind of scary, because can he sell it and build apartments or townhouses on it? I mean, this is kind of scary stuff to us, because that's not what we bought over there. We bought into farmhouses and a quiet country road and, you know, pretty hills, and that wasn't what we bought. And I feel like that's what people are afraid of. We don't care if they build on it. We just want them to, and his common area, that's a little scary. I mean, his common area is on the side of the road. That's where you want kids to play. We have a ton of common area. We have ponds and bridges, and they can't come over to ours. Ours is private. So they have to have somewhere to play. And I wouldn't want my kid playing on the side of the road. I don't think that's good. Common area on the side of the road. Would you want your child to play on the side of the road? I don't think any of you want your kid playing on the side of the road. We really need RS6 residential. Not this, they can build whatever they want on it. That's all we're asking for. We just want them to fit into our community. We don't want them to be able to build townhomes or condos, or we just want them to build houses. That's all we're asking for. So that's what we'd like.
Mayor Kling?
Thank you.
Can
Yes,
I,
and
before you leave,
yeah.
if I can respond to what your concerns are.
Sure.
What we're being asked is an annexation and a zoning request, either RS4 or RS6, but it's for a single-family residential subdivision. It's not for one lot developed with multiple high-density units on it. So what we're being asked for is basically what you're seeing up there, single-family lots.
Yes.
So that's all I was going to say to you. I think if you were to look at an RS4 and the amount of density that could hold as one lot.
RS4 does not have to have, they don't have to have that buffer
Correct.
around the
Yeah.
side, and all of the subdivisions have that through there. And we have huge I mean, Wycliffe has it, and Raintree down the road has it. They have beautiful ones with benches for their kids to sit on while they're waiting for the bus. So, I mean, I'm just looking at, they need to fit into our community, not be something different than what everybody else is. And my biggest concern is that he is a realtor, not a developer. And so if he gets one of those zonings, I don't know what he's gonna do, but what if he sells it?
So I think that's what
That's my
Councilman
point.
Haverfield is wanting to explain, so go ahead.
I was just, again, what I'm saying is, it's a single-family development, subdivision. It's not one lot with multiple buildings on it that you can have high density. So your fears are for something high density without that has the concerns that I would expect. But what you're getting is something very similar to where you live. It's an RS6 potentially, if we allow it, with the buffering.
But that 1027-4 allows for 4,000 square foot lots, and
But there's a spillover, like you'd have on a golf course. Small lots on a golf course that has a lot of green space to it. It's the same type of thought. All I'm trying to share with you is, I think your concerns are maybe not as real as you think that they could be. So
in Wycliffe, the average lot size is 8,500 square feet. They do have lots as small as 6,996, but their average size is 85. Ours are 16,000 square foot on an average.
in an RS6 development,
Yes,
because of the
And
lakes that you're built around.
and we're right next to them. We're
Yeah.
the closest.
Yeah, all I'm saying is the
Raintree
same
is
zoning.
10,000, their average lot size is 10,000.
I'm sorry, I don't want to argue with you. I just wanted to help maybe alleviate some of your fears.
And
but-
Mayor, the bottom line, when the applicant or whoever or staff comes up, what I'm hearing her say is she doesn't want to take a chance of this being a resale and then have housing on there. So whether that is possible or not, what I'm hearing from Councilman Haverfield is that will not be possible even if there was a sale.
That's what we're being asked to approve or not approve.
Wasn't that one of your concerns?
That's my biggest.
And what you're hearing from Councilman Haverfield, which I believe he's correct, is that cannot happen.
So
That is
the
correct.
1027-4, it cannot happen.
Well, we're going to hear from the authorities here soon,
Thank you.
rather than somebody that's not a developer or a realtor. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you very much. So I think, as far as I know, that is everyone that is signed up. Is there anyone here that had intended to sign up that did not get signed up to testify in opposition or in favor of? Rick, I don't think there are any elsewhere. Okay,
Mayor,
yes.
we do have people signed up online.
Should I refresh?
Is that correct, Doug?
That's correct.
And the list is on the screen.
Oh, okay, so I don't have that evidently. Where's that list? Let's see. Okay, so are these so this is because of the online side, I'm just learning how we're doing this. So these were people that actually showed up. These must have signed up in advance,
That's correct.
but they're online.
That's correct.
Thank you, I missed that. Okay, so I guess, do you know which ones are actually on?
I could try to see.
So
I
let's
would
just go on.
suggest you just call their name and.
Okay, we'll just go in order, and the first one is Patty Zimmerman. So what we're going to do as we go through this, and for those that are listening, you're going to need to unmute when I call your name, and the order after Patty Zimmerman is that something Christensen?
Dawn.
Dawn Christensen? And so, Dawn, you already spoke, okay? And then Amy Vitek, is that correct? Is it Z?
It's V.
V is in victory.
Vitek? Okay, so we're starting with Patty Zimmerman. Patty, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we do have, for each of the people listening, you will be given 3 minutes, and then I guess I'll have the fun job of interrupting you in the event that we hit the 3 minutes. And yes.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Have any of the folks signed up to testify changed because the applicant has now said they learned this morning that RS6 would be agreeable? Because most of, I think, what we had been emailed about was the RS4. And so I'm just wondering if there's a group who may have a different perspective now that the applicant has changed their position.
It's a very good question. The difficulty in the online environment that we're in, I don't have a way other than letting them testify.
Yeah.
So because it is a public hearing, I guess I would ask for those that are online that are wanting to testify, if you just are wanting to support something that someone ahead of you said, feel free just to say that so noted, I support the conversation that just took place ahead of me, and then we will so note it. Or if your opinion has changed based on the RS6 versus the RS4. So with that, we will go through this list and go back to that list on screen. Or Rodney, do you want to walk us through since you have the list on your computer?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you lead it then. And then do you want to track the time or do you want me to do that?
I'd be happy to do that too.
Okay. So Rodney, you're on. Thank you.
So am I still up?
Patty Zimmerman, I think you are up. Thank you. And go ahead and state your address, please.
Okay, I'm at 2802 South Bay Hill Court. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. I provided information for each of the packets. I think Doug saw that it was included in the packets for me. So you have that information there. And many of the comments that I had included in that packet have already been voiced by my neighbors that are there at the meeting. So I'll make this short and sweet. I wanted to just say that I wish that I could go along with, I wish that I could trust and believe that what has been presented by the owner is what would really happen. Because if that's what would really happen in an RS6 environment, I think it would be wonderful. But I've had the experience of having owners tell me that something's going to happen a certain way. I included the picture of what I look out at every single day, which is mini storage, which I was told would be handled differently and was not. And that's my concern and worry about what will happen here.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing your comments. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. And then I think we had, Rodney, was it Amy Vitek was next?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, hello. I'll make it really quick. I am opposed to the RS4, but I do support the RS6 as shown, and this is a huge improvement, the new plot that we're looking at compared to the other two that we had seen. So I would be in support of an RS6.
Thank you, Amy. And then, Amy, what was your address? Or Rodney, do you have her address? Could you, I didn't have you stated.
420 West Bay Hill Drive.
Thank you.
So next we have Linda Smith at 2923 South Island Drive. Linda, are you on?
Linda, do you happen to be on? Sometimes it takes a minute to unmute.
If you're on a phone, you need to hit *6 to unmute. Okay.
And Rodney, did you have Linda signed up in favor of or opposed?
Doug, can you speak to that? Do you know if...
Opposed. The remainder are opposed. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So Mike and Maddie, I'm going to mess this one up. Gervais?
Gervais, yes, we are here.
And they're at 3202 Oxbow Drive.
Yes. Can
Go
you
ahead.
hear us okay? Okay. I'm going to make this short and sweet as well. We also oppose the RS4 as well as the RS6 1027-4, but we are in favor of the RS6, the single family residential style. We think that would be really great and beneficial to get that area developed, but definitely for the RS6. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I now have Christine Gravier at 3008 South Island Drive.
Am I on?
You are.
Okay, awesome. I'm Christine Gravier. I live at 3008 South Island Drive. I have lived here with my family for 17 years, and my backyard backs up to this property in question. I agree with what my other neighbors have said so far. I am definitely against the RS4, and I am against the 1027-4 RS6. I just want this to be a plain old RS6. And my biggest fear is that I know that you or someone has addressed this already, but that I wish I could trust the person that said that they were going to develop this as planned, because what I think will happen is once they get the RS4 zoning, they're going to turn around and sell it. And then in my backyard will pop up 30 apartment buildings. And which I don't mind. I'm for development of that area. Just I don't want 30 apartment buildings in my backyard because it is really hard to get out onto not only Dooley, but to make a left turn onto onto 12th from Dooley Avenue. And I just want to address one thing that one of the somebody that was in favor spoke. She was like the first person, I think, and she was saying how it was against the law to discriminate what goes into this area. And I just want it noted that I am a minority woman living in Bay Hill, and that's not the issue that we have in question. I just don't want 30 apartment buildings in there, and that's all.
And if I could follow up just to say, I so appreciate everyone's willingness to pause and take time to join us tonight. It's excellent. And especially taking the time to go online if you can't be here. But as I'm sure you heard earlier, us confirm that this will not turn into multifamily if the rezone is done in such a way, and that's the commitment from the council in the city, that an RS6 is an RS6. It cannot be turned around and sold. And that's the intent of this council. You could not turn around and sell it to turn it into multifamily. So rest assured that it is not zoned for that. So they could not do that.
So the next one we have is Rich and Rochelle Martin at 439 West Island Court.
So that was Rochelle that already spoke.
The next one is Jeanette Bullock at 504 West Bay Hill Drive, followed by Greg Bullock at the same address. Are the Bullocks in the meeting? Don't see them online.
Even if they're not here, they will be noted as an opposition to, just so that it's up record.
And the final one is John Prince at 3708 South Banbury Court. I show a John online. I'm not sure if that's the same one.
Might mention he's
John,
still muted. Yeah.
Yeah, you're muted, John, if you're online.
If he's on a phone, can you remind him *6?
*6 to speak if you're muted on a phone. Still show him as muted.
Do you have the ability to unmute?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. I don't
He
know.
was opposed, so we know.
He was opposed. Okay.
That was all.
Okay. So for those that, just in case they were online and they were unable to unmute or speak, I just want everybody to know that they are so noted as in opposition so that it is of record. Is there anyone else that is here that had intended to speak that didn't get signed up? Okay, I don't see anyone. And so I believe at that would conclude our public hearing. But before we close the public hearing, do we have any questions that need to be addressed before the closing of the public hearing? We can't. Yes. Oh, that's right. I am so glad you're sitting here because I just goofed. I forgot to have you come back, and thank you. And
I think he had plenty to say.
I think so too. And so are you both going to speak, Mr. Mason, or is the owner going to speak? Okay, great. Thank you.
Would you like me to take my address again?
Nope. I think we've got it, and thank you for
This is going to
taking.
be rapid fire because I only have 3 minutes. Is that correct?
No, you've got more than that.
You guys are busy. So just to clarify some things, the farmhouse, correct, is in the bottom southeast corner of the property. We intend to keep that. That was built in 1910. The original owners of that, dating back pre-1959 even, owned what is now Bay Hill and sold it off. Several aspects of the property as it is will be incorporated into the architecture of the homes that I will build, so that it's interesting talking about historic preservation tonight, and it kind of fits. So that's that. The common area, the perimeter of the, again, this is conceptual. This isn't a plat, this isn't approved, but it's conceptual in what we want to do. The perimeter around the outside, whether it's RS4 or RS6, we're going to have to retain anyway. So that will be landscaped. And just to address some of the concerns, I'd like to go on the record and even say, as a condition of approval, I'd be willing to guarantee not to build any lot smaller than 6,000 square feet, if that helps. So were there any other questions that I can help answer or clarify?
Mayor, I believe it's Mrs. Martin that mentioned the common area. And so as far as where kids can play and so on, what's your plan or perception?
So based on what I understood of the zoning, and Doug can clarify this, there's not a requirement for common area within the actual subdivision, though we do intend to put sidewalks around the cul-de-sac, landscape the edges of the cul-de-sac and the sidewalk, and then yards in the homes. There will be plenty of yard for the kids to play in there, if that answers your question.
Okay, so there's no just a specific little rec area for kids or
It's not designated that way in the concept that we have here, yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
Will someone remain living in the farmhouse?
Well, my father lives in it currently. It's not, how should I put it? It shows its age. It hasn't aged as well as others have. So we'd like to fix it up and restore it and retain it as best we can. And if we sell it off, then then we sell it off, but we'd like to keep it. I'd personally like to keep it.
I was wondering if that might become some sort of a common area like Hidden Springs has in Boise.
It could be, and I've
really
explored it. You can barely see it. It's very faint. There's an overlay. There's on the west side of that bottom lot, there is a gray building. That's an existing shop. We wanted to keep the farmhouse and the existing shop, but if need be, and we're required to put common area, there's area there to use for that.
Thank you.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Can you, again, when we talked earlier, it was expressed that lot number, if it's 4, the large rectangular lot that fronts on Dooley, would be cut down to about how big, 11,000 square feet or smaller?
I can't see it right there, and I don't remember the exact square footage.
It's 13,480.
Okay, but that lot had to be a part of the computation to be able to develop the 6,000 square foot requirement if it's an RS6. So I guess back to our concern that if we allow this development to go forward and conceptual, even though it's conceptual, you still have to meet the requirements of what we place on this development.
Correct.
That lot needs to be developed in such a way that is a common area available to the balance of those lots. if the lot sizes are less than 6,000 square feet. So are you ready to be able to do that if necessary, to provide a tot lot or to provide some sort of a common area for the kids to play on if it comes to that?
Certainly, I am.
Okay. And then there was an episode of Fixer Upper where they took a barn and created a barn-dominium. So you might go back and look. There's some pretty creative ways of being able to develop barns.
I've already promised my neighbors I'm not doing multi-housing, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a man of my word here.
Are there any other questions for our applicant? Okay. Are there any other closing comments or remarks that you would like to make?
Well, I am a realtor. I do have a real estate license. That's what I do to pay the bills, but the only reason I do that is to pay the bills. I don't want to be a realtor long-term. That's not my goal. My goal is to help people. And whatever tool I can do or use or gain to do that's my goal. Right now it is being a realtor. I don't know that I consider myself a developer, but I enjoy this, and I enjoy improvement. So if there's any lot that captured my, I guess, interest, it was this one. Again, I'm not Hubble Homes. I'm not CBH. I don't play in that game. And again, as a condition of approval, if you wish, I will guarantee not building anything smaller than 6,000 square foot lots.
Mayor, if I may, I do have one further question. I realize this is not what we're voting on, and so not to hold you. Are you planning on having multi-builders come into to build, or are you have one or two builders in mind, or have you even considered that yet?
We've talked briefly about that. There are a couple of builders I've talked with, but it's very, very preliminary, and I'd like to build them myself, to be honest with you.
So have you have built houses in the past?
I've been in construction. I've not built a single family residence.
Okay. Thanks.
A comment I'd like to make before we close is the discussion we had this morning. As directors, we had Doug Critchfield and Rodney present to us a concept that will be coming before City Council. And it really it speaks to this right here. Wouldn't you say, Rodney?
Absolutely.
And that is, in a situation like this, one of the things that we're seeing in our community are people that are retiring that are wanting to reduce their square footage, but they're wanting a nice home. But they don't want the requirement of the ground, but they want open green space. And so one of the things that we have talked about to consider is when you have a minimum lot size, let's say we say it's 6,000 square feet, but everybody's got a fence, right? And the kids have to play in the backyard and there's no open green space. There are people that would rather have a smaller yard and less confined of all the fences, but also have beautifully landscaped open green space to be able, and the common space to come together. And so that's a concept that you see a lot of developments moving to, and different ones that are developing. But the intent is that it's a very nice space. We've got a lot of people retiring here and moving here, and that's somewhat what they're looking for, is reducing their lot size and having that. So I think what's important is that you get an outcome that is pleasing and that's fitting with what is around you. And it's an interesting place for council and being prescriptive, because I think about our homeowners that are sitting here that are really interested in protecting their investment, right? And protecting what they have. At the same time, we can be so prescriptive that we don't actually protect it, we inhibit it, because we've said you have to do X and you have to have these fences that have to be maintained, that are less attractive, versus if you create some really nice single family units that have beautiful landscaping and walking paths and open green space. And so I think the creativity of going where we're seeing our community wants to go is more open green space and walking paths, and they may be smaller units, but they're nice units that people are interested in owning. And so I just wanted to share with council, those are the discussions, and that will be coming to council in I don't know if it'll be a workshop or if it'll be part of the city council meeting at some point, to look at how we're going to change our zoning and how we're prescribing it so that we can actually accomplish that. So I just want to say that to council because it's a discussion we had this morning.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
May I just clarify a couple things for the council?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the comprehensive plan for this area calls this as a medium density residential, which doesn't allow multifamily. So I think that clarifies that question in terms of the zoning. There was a question about the average lot size, and given the configuration that's been presented this evening, if included all the lots, all 10 lots, the average lot size is 7,750 square feet. If you take out the 2 largest lots and just include the 8 smaller lots, the average lot size is 6,500 square feet. So the applicant's proposal this evening, if he goes with this configuration, is well within the RS6 designation, without having to provide open space. That would not be required. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, to clarify that for you.
Doug, thank you. Is there anything else?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I think we could stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there council discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion if you, okay.
Okay,
Unless you want to have discussion before the motion.
go for it.
Okay. In looking at this earlier, before this tonight's presentation, it appeared to me that an RS6 would be much more compatible in the area, and that was the question that I asked and was answered. So I would make a motion to allow the annexation and zoning to an RS6 for a single-family residential subdivision. As presented to us this evening, there would be a maximum number of lots of 9 plus a lot that would remain for the barn, which would be 10 lots. And based upon what the applicant has stated, that all of the lots would have to have a minimum size of 6,000 square feet.
And also with recommendations as.
Oh, yes, and with the recommendations presented on our packet, recommended conditions of approval. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Councilwoman Mucci.
Mayor, I think Councilman Haverfield brought a lot of clarity to the process, and I appreciate that. He is the architect, so I defer to him often. And it feels like this supports the zoning that's already contiguous with the area. And it doesn't seem like 10 single units would be deleterious to Bay Hill and other surrounding areas. And I appreciate the applicant being really willing to have discussion. And again, I appreciate Councilman Haverfield bringing clarity. Thank you.
I think the only question that I have is that by saying that in this motion that the minimum lot size is 6,000, it does limit the opportunity for walking paths or open green space. It dictates that it is just a lot. And so, but I have a quick question. The next phase though, because what you want to do is protect the right. And I think I think what I'm hearing is that there is a mutuality in, yes, we want to do something great. We want to do something that's pleasing. So is the restriction of the minimum of 6,000, is that the right thing to do? Does that provide the best, or does that need to be in the motion? If it's an RS6, they have the flexibility of creating a development that could be open green a little bit more. Is there a design review process that can be put through to ensure that we accomplish the end outcome without saying it has to be X?
Only with the CCNRs of the development, if they were created. But I think in looking at the configuration that's on the screen, if that it was a private road, or if it's not a private road, if it's a public road and was shifted to the east slightly, those first 3 lots could be made smaller to add more square footage to the other lots to the west. So I think 6,000 square feet would be easily attainable just in the computations I was looking at. Again, it's in, if you were to go to the center line of the road as well, I mean, you can make those lots even bigger, but they were in that about 7,000 square foot range. So I think in talking and listening to what the Bay Hill residents were saying, the lot sizes that they have are smaller, but then they have a common area that they surround with the lakes that are out there. So it's a little bit, I guess, it's not apples to apples because of that. But I think if we maintain the 6,000 square foot, I think they can still create the buffering that's going to be pleasing. And then the Canyon Street, again, it separates Bay Hill from this little development here. And as it further develops to the east as well, it's a separate street in a sense, but it does skirt the perimeter on the east and of Bay Hill. So I think it needs to be looked at on its own merit. I wish it was a 55 and older community like you're talking about. I think we're really lacking that type of development, but that'd be more of a planned unit development approach. And this is a single family residential development. So they can sell the lots off individually. But if we were to try to create a PUD approach, we'd have to look at it differently than what we're asking for tonight.
And Mayor, I'll just add, just to reinforce what Councilman Haverfield and also Doug said, I'm still in agreement with the motion because there is extra space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my understanding is there's still, 6,700 or whatever, even with the 8 smaller lots, not counting the 2 larger ones. So there is space. I don't know what that configuration would look like, but I'm still fine with the motion.
And I don't think that the shed's going to be able to stay. I think it's going to have to go away. The barn can stay. But to be able to get the lots that they need to be, I think it's crossing over a line there possibly. But again, we'll let staff work with them in developing something that's going to be acceptable to the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and roll call.
Rodriguez?
No.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes. Excuse me.
Bauer?
Yes.
Bruner?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Okay, so that concludes public hearing 6-1. And we have one other public hearing this evening. And thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, public hearing 6-2 is an action item, and this is to consider increases in wastewater and water utility rates, fees, and hookup fees. And Tom, thank you for sharing. Tom is both our applicant and staff report this evening. And before you get started, I have a quick question. Do we have people online that are testifying on this tonight? Do you know if there are any signups? Rick, I might have you help us. Do you know of any on?
I don't know any online.
There were none when we came to the meeting.
Okay, so, okay, thank you so much. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Council. So public hearing is for utility rate increases. So we've got 2 utilities to talk about. So it's domestic water and wastewater. And so we prepared a couple presentations here, and what I'd like to do is Jake and I are going to split up these presentations. I'll do kind of the intro and some background on how we got here, and he's going to do the numbers part. He likes numbers, so yeah, he's going to do that part for us. So we'll start with the water increase. So all of these increases, just to start off with, went through the Board of Appraisers. And these are the Board of Appraisers looks at utility rates and increases and rates, and they all approved these increases that we're bringing forward tonight. On the water side, it's a lower amount. It's 1.76% is what we're proposing. If council approves that, and really that's just to continue to maintain our system. That's the Consumer Price Index. There are several different indexes in there that were brought forward to the Board of Appraisers. There's the Consumer Price Index, and there's what's called a PPI, a Producers Index. The Producers Index is a little higher because it's more of a regional index. So we, recognizing that there's some economic impacts with COVID, 19, and the Board of Appraisers and staff recommended to the lower rate, the 1.76%. All these slides are in your packet here. There was actually 4 options. There was an 8%, the 4.35%, and the 1.76%, or no increase. The board recommended to move forward with the 1.76. Just in this, think of it as a cost of material increase. Material costs continue to go up for construction in our area. So this is less than what we called out in our 2018 cost of service study. We were talking about 8%, as you can see on this slide here, for a number of years still. So we're talking about fiscal year 21. Our cost of service study was saying 8%, and then 22 and 8%. So we're deviating from our plan and trying to be sensitive to economic times. So with that, we're not meeting our goal. In our slides here, our goal was to have 3 miles of water replacement every year. We're at a point now with our funding, we're able to get 1. So about a third of the way there. So we'll be back next year, talking more about these, more towards the 8% increase to get us back on track for that maintenance that needs to be done. Another thing that we did, we adjusted our program and we dropped the elevated water tank project down a year. We're still planning on doing it, but we moved the construction back a year to be able to have this lower rate increase. I'm gonna have Jake come up and talk some about the numbers here.
Mayor, Tom, are you talking about the freeway water tank at the old Micron site?
Yes, Council Haverfield, yes.
Okay.
There.
So Mayor and Council, as Tom mentioned, we are proposing a 1.76% increase. Again, deviating from that plan. I guess the bad news is the money need is still there, so eventually we're gonna have to come back for a little bit more. But what Tom didn't mention is that we do have the utility impact fee proposal that we're gonna be bringing forward later this year that we're excited for. Really hoping that's really gonna relieve some of the upward pressure on rates. So that is something that we feel like we're in good shape to get moving. And it also gives us a little bit of breathing room, I think, especially with taking the smaller increase this year. We can kind of hold steady and see what that new impact fee might be able to bring to us. So as we mentioned, we're proposing the 1.76% increase. Here is the actual rates that you'll see presented and the differences for all the different meters and usage that we currently have. Again, it's just taken based on the 1.76% increase and rounded to the nearest dollar. Or penny, I guess. So some of them do fluctuate a little bit from 1.76%, but that is the gist of it. The average residential bill will go up about 26 cents a month based on the 700 cubic feet that we.
Can you say that again?
The average residential household will see about a 26-cent per month increase on the water side.
Mayor Kling. So what we're seeing here is every month. These are monthly charges, not every 2 months.
That is correct.
Okay.
Mayor Gling,
Yes.
clarification. The 26 cents a month is not a base. It is how much water you use.
That is correct.
So
Part
it
of
could
it
go up
is-
to 60 cents a month.
Very true, yes.
Okay, I want to clarify that.
The 26 cents is based on an average usage of 700 cubic feet per month.
So if you have a 3,000 square foot house or a 2,000 square foot house, and then compared to a 1,500 square foot house, the bigger homes, of course, is going to maybe use more and their bill will go higher.
Correct.
The smaller units, well, if you have 4 or 5 children in there, you're going to use a lot.
Correct.
So the bill is going to go up more than 1.76%. That was my point.
Yep, it's based on usage.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm just thinking the increase is 1.76%. But how much that is may vary based on,
Yes.
but it won't go above the 1.76%.
That's
So
correct.
1%, 1.76% of what they're already paying,
Well, I think you said it was 26 cents. That's just a baseline.
just as an
Right.
average.
Right, but the usage could go a lot higher. Okay.
Yes. Councilman Brunner?
Yeah. Did you have something? So on your graph, just where you're putting on the 7 CCF average monthly, and then in 20 it was 1674 per month, and it's 1808 for domestic water, which is a $1.34 increase per month. So I still need some help with how the 26 cents per month is what the increase is going to be.
Councilman Brunner, I'm not certain what graph you're looking at.
It's on my page is 825. I don't know if that's what your page is. It says domestic water utility revenue requirement forecast.
Right there.
Yep. So, Councilman Brunner, what you're seeing there is from the 2018 study. So that increase would have been with the 8%.
Oh, that's for the 8, even though the 8% is crossed out in red. That's
Correct.
still.
That's just showing that's what the plan was.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I just add 26 cents or whatever onto 1674, that's what we're looking at.
Yep.
Okay.
You can see the bill comparisons that I put together for FY 2020. The numbers shown here with the different cities are based on what they currently have set as their rates. So again, if any other jurisdictions are looking at rate increases, that is not part of this calculation like it is ours. But as you can see, based on our projection and what we're proposing, we are still the lowest in the valley.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
So Jake, to be clear, we're talking about residential and commercial or non-residential are
Yes.
all going up just the same amount.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to clarify, in your combined water sewer bill comparison that you have here, that combined bill, Nampa staff proposed, has the 1.76 plus the wastewater in there also.
Correct. The
Right.
16.75% that we'll be proposing next.
Next, right? So combined, we're still less than Caldwell.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, just so that you can kind of see where our fund is projected to go. This is our outlook for the next 10 years. Again, we show that we're definitely going to need some more money in the future, but what we don't know is what that impact fee can bring. We also have master plans currently being worked on right now for all 3 utilities, irrigation, domestic, and wastewater. So these outlooked numbers can change in any direction at this point. Is there any questions on the usage rates before we move into hookup fees?
So you're moving into wastewater yet?
No, we're still water, so this is still domestic water hookup fees.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Okay. The question I have, or statement I have is this. Due to this current situation that we have economically and what our residents are having to go through at this point because of unemployment, because of no money coming in, period. How much is the city behind or not received revenue because of the people are behind in their arrears and paying a water bill? How much is that right now? And then if that's the case, why should we go further and apply another 1.76% on top of that?
Yep. Councilman Rodriguez, I'll have to defer what we have not collected to finance. I don't have that number, but I can tell you that the increase that we're proposing is simply just to stay afloat and catch up with the CPI increase. It doesn't even keep up with the increase in construction costs that we're seeing. So it puts us a little bit behind, but it's at least something to kind of keep us up to where we need to be.
I see. Okay, thank you. I'll ask Doug that question here in a minute.
Mayor? Yes, Councilwoman Levi?
Thank you. I ask this question every year. With the rates that we've been taking over the past few years, do we have money sitting in reserve that we have accrued so that if we have an emergency that we can take care of it?
Yes, Councilwoman Levi, we do. Our fund balance with the projected FY21 budget will put us a little over $6 million in the water fund in reserves, with the minimum fund balance being $3 million.
And follow up, please. And that has come because we have had taken rate increases, correct?
That's correct.
And so as we've had growth in the last few years, has that springboarded us ahead as well?
Councilwoman Levi, we're using that fund balance on an annual basis in construction and capital. trying to spend that down almost to the minimum level. We just have that much catch up to do to where we can essentially, if we really need to, we can spend that all in 1 year. We have enough projects that we could spend it all right now if we really wanted to. We're trying to bring that glide slope down gently so that we can try to have rates and other revenues kind of catch up to that so that we don't run into that minimum fund balance. But there's definitely plenty of projects out there. As Tom mentioned, we're a third of our way there on just replacing aged infrastructure.
So going back to the emergency side of things, and I know each emergency has its own uniqueness. So in the past couple of years when we've had emergencies, kind of what is our average bill that we're running?
Councilwoman Levi, I can't tell you what that exact amount is. Again, it just depends on what the project is. Last year, the project under I-84 was just under $1 million. That's a pretty large one, but the reserve is there and it's intended to be able to cover if we have to replace a well at any given moment or something to that effect.
Okay, thank you.
So Flamingo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to play out a scenario then. You have 6 million in reserve right now. 3 million is the minimum reserve we need to hang on to. If three of it were used to extend the 3 mile or the mile to further some of these projects, and then there was an emergency were to happen, that's what that extra 3 million is for. So why aren't we looking at potentially the utilization of the surplus at this point in some of your projections here? Or are you?
Councilman Haverfield, we are. The green line, which is the bottom line, you'll see is the actual fund balance. And what this projection shows is just keeping up with the master plan and trying to meet that asset management level of aged infrastructure and getting it replaced. So you can see that within the next year, we will take that down to the minimum fund balance or lower if we really.
Because of this decision potentially tonight of not funding to the 8%?
The decision tonight will make that glide slope decline faster, yes.
So, I'm sorry, Mayor, just to continue the thought then, or it looks like we would have a continuation of the forecast to 26, 27, since we're not taking the monies now, or at least increasing, or at least talking about increasing for the water rates. It's just going to extend that glide pattern out a little bit further as well. So the decision to take less today means we might have to extend it a little bit further at the end.
That's correct.
Right. Which I believe the taxpayers approved, didn't they, as far as in the vote of what the path was? But we've got extenuating circumstances now that we're dealing with. So back to Victor's point, now we're looking at people not being able to pay their bills.
Yes.
So what are we doing to help minimize that cost
Well, this
to them?
is, just for clarity, what you just referenced was wastewater, though, in the vote, and this is the
That didn't
domestic.
include that then.
It did not include it, and so it's very separate.
But he shook
so-
his head like I would convinced him it did.
I know, I'm sorry, I
was
just
shaking
needed to
my head
catch
to
it,
answer
sorry.
You just don't want to disagree with him.
Yeah.
Mayor, you can disagree with him anytime you want, so.
Respectfully, right.
Yeah, respect, yeah.
Stop it.
So, question. So, in the last couple of years, we've had a couple of things. One, we had the Garrity Boulevard, and you mentioned that was approximately $1 million.
Mayor, just off the top of my head, I believe it was between $600,000 and $800,000.
Okay. And then the most recent was Flamingo, and I believe that was domestic water, main break. Where we have been able to help offset the costs is that we have our own streets department. And so what you did was went in and repaired, but then this year, I believe it was, that we went in and tore up the street and went in and repaired it. I don't know what the total cost of that is. I'm thankful we can do the work ourselves, somewhat. I'm not sure how much of that we outsourced. Do you know off the top of your head what the repair cost was just on that road alone that we're doing right now, or that we did?
Mayor and council, I do know that essentially when that problem occurred, we kind of shut the water off there and delayed fixing that until we could actually program it into a fiscal year project, which is what we've just completed, and I believe that was over $1 million to do that complete
is fine.
rebuild.
Mayor, are you allowed to commingle funds though with streets and other utility services? I mean, if necessary, emergency is emergency.
Well, streets comes in and helps because they have to, right? Well, or is it our water department that's going and doing the digging? It's water, because we have our own backhoes, right? And water. So it's water, it's not streets,
It's not
excuse
going to
me.
be surface
I
stuff then.
misstated.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's still shaking his head like I made sense.
So as we laugh, it's not to make light of this. This is serious. I think the issue is that we're so mindful. And I sit on the board of appraisers, so was part of this discussion. And when the recommendation was, I believe the staff recommendation initially was at that 8 or 9%, and that's the glide path that we had been at. And what we asked and suggested was that we come back to 1.76%, which to the average user, it's not a considerable increase, but somewhere we're going to have to catch up. So somewhere you have to pay the bills, somewhere you have to have the money to fix these lines. Unfortunately, we have a big footprint in our city with aging infrastructure. And that's when we run into these things where you have a whole road that you've got to. We ran into it when we did downtown Nampa, right? We've realized we've got to repair and put in new domestic water lines. So it's so difficult, but 1.76 at least covers the cost without a significant increase. Well, it doesn't cover the cost, but it doesn't keep us quite at zero, but it also isn't devastating.
So Mayor, on this one alone, I mean, we're talking about it from I realize it depends on consumption, but we're talking about anywhere from a $3 to $6 annual increase, right?
That's correct.
One latte. Okay, so I mean, I mean, get this out there. I want to be careful about, what we're doing with folks out there, but I mean, we're not talking about to just maintain or even less than maintain. We're not talking about, I mean, I think that's what our citizens want to know is exactly what could it cost? What's the what's the low, what's the high? And hopefully everyone's careful with their water usage. And if the other thing is, I mean, hopefully we can maybe educate some folks as far as what they can do to decrease water usage. There's some things, my understanding, you can do with your toilets and different things and so on. And I'm not sure how well we're educating some of the folks during these type of times, how they can save. So, okay, thanks.
Mayor,
Yes,
is this discussion?
a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
this is actually presentation, but we're asking questions as we go.
But I agree with exactly what Darrell said. I just get scared of the optics because we just got done shutting down small businesses and like taking away people's jobs, but allowing people to jam into these big corporations. So people aren't very happy with government right now. So the optics don't look good, even if it is 1%. Me personally, I'd rather us not do anything right now since we just shut down small businesses, since we just put the axe to a lot of people's jobs and incomes. I'd rather do a bigger increase after COVID next year than even a small increase now. But that's just me. Even optics can, even if it's just a few cents, just don't look.
Yeah. And Mayor, I would agree with that. And Councilman Ballard, I would agree with that too, if we knew what this COVID was, when the final date was. And people are working like crazy. I'm not sure when that's going to be. And dropping from 8% to 1.76, I mean, that's a huge, I think we're looking after the citizen.
I agree.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I also worry about folks who are on a fixed income, and the larger increase to catch up really impacts them significantly. And I think that's where I've seen some emails coming in from those folks who will be impacted as we play catch up. So I think the smaller catch up we play may actually be kinder to some of the folks who struggle year over year in our community. It's a really hard situation either way.
I will say, and I didn't, unfortunately, I didn't bring the numbers out with me, but we do have assistance for our citizens. And right now, we have more assistance than we have had in some time. Through the CARES Act, we have actually 3 different avenues for financial assistance. In our Shares and Cares program alone, for seniors, we have assistance, and that's approximately 20-some thousand that we still have available. We have about 104 available through our normal Shares and Cares that is not citizen-related. But outside of that, through our housing and urban renewal area, they have access to COVID dollars for financial assistance for those that have lost jobs and need assistance. And YCAP has funds available. So one thing I do want to encourage is our citizens to access the funds that are there, because there are funds to help support being behind. And that's something we're communicating. I think, Doug, we've got mailings that are going out. Is that correct?
We do. We're trying to communicate. Sorry, Mayor, I can't see when I talk over there. We're trying to communicate that out. We have approximately 28,500 in the senior citizen Shares and Cares, $107,000 in the Shares and Cares program that is managed by the with the MOU with the Salvation Army, and then we have two other organizations, YCAP and the NAPA. I can't remember the housing. I can't remember the exact name of that we're leveraging that has CARES monies. So we have 3 avenues for people to access funds if they're struggling right now, and it's helping to reduce the debt load on the utilities. And I have some of the numbers if you want me to share them now, at least the outstanding balances.
Mayor, question.
Yes.
Doug, then can the city manage the payment of those past due bills on their behalf, or do they have to request it to get the money to be able to pay for those past due bills?
We want people to take active ownership of their accounts by coming in and working with us. We will not go out and proactively automatically take care of somebody's bill, because that will result in a situation where we're constantly paying other people's bills, and then that puts the city at risk of paying bills that we can't afford to pay for. So what we're trying to do is we're just at the point now where we're trying to resume normal utility billing operations, and we are communicating out to the residents, and we have been for a week, and we will be until the 19th, that we will begin operations and potential disconnects for non-payment. But we're taking 3 to 4 weeks to communicate that out, and we're notifying people of their opportunities for, 1, to either come in and make payment arrangements. 2, we're notifying them of the opportunities for leveraging existing funding sources outside the city. And 3, we're notifying them of the opportunity with Shares and Cares for them to help pay their bills within the city.
I can appreciate that to a point. I think if people are homebound and are on fixed incomes, scared to leave their homes because of the COVID thing, whether they have a mask or not have a mask on, I think if there's a way that we could help manage for them, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Ownership of paying your bills, yeah, that's important. But I think if there's a way that we can help them have access to that a lot easier than them having to maybe reach out in a medium that they're not used to, whether it's online or else other people that are elderly. I mean, they just don't have a knack to touch a computer if they even have one.
So Mayor, a phone call, there's still phones.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Okay. But I'm just asking, can we manage that for them? What I'm hearing is no.
Well, if you want
because
to
it's a
hire more
pragmatic
employees,
process.
you want to hire more employees to do all this, why cannot somebody call? If they don't want to get out of their home, that's fine.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with you here. I'm talking about if there's a way that we can manage it for them, and it sounds like that's not the practice nor the desire. So if that's the case, that's the case.
We have certain opportunities where we can assist them and guide them. We will certainly talk with any of our residential or non-residential customers, and we will try and guide them to the steps they need to go through to secure funding to pay their bills. We're not going to, in fact, we find it necessary that many of our account holders, we need to provide them the guidance on how to go through the steps, but we can't go through the steps for them. So we'll direct them where to go. We'll give them the information. And many times I think we'll even jointly connect with the various funding sources, but the individual account holders have to follow through the steps to actually secure the funding after we've connected them with the various opportunities.
Is that a phone call, or is that, I mean, because it's not over the counter.
Yeah.
It can be a phone call, yes.
Well, it
but
has to be,
if it's with, but that's the reason we moved partly away from YCAP, because we had to send people all the way out to Canyon County and then have them come. Requirements to go out there and fill out the application and then bring it back to us for approval for the payment. That was the reason we moved to Salvation Army, was closer.
Okay, thank you.
I think our utility billing is sending out information in mailings. They're doing emails. They do have phone calls that they do. And so I think we're really working diligently to connect people and tell them how they can access resources. It's very important, but it is very time consuming.
We do not, we're trying to be more than proactive in this state as we begin to resume normal operations. And we don't want anybody to be caught off guard. So rather than just having a normal 2-week process, we've almost had a 4-week process where we are reaching out to people with phone mails, with emails, and we're probably going to consider adding door hangers back for this process. We tried to cut out the door hangers because it's an extra cost and we have so many more accounts we have to do it, but we may add up door hangers just so we don't catch anybody off guard for this process. I don't think most of the other municipalities around us do not do the door hangers because it's an added cost and you can accomplish the same thing with emails and phone mails. But this one time, I think we talked about it today, to add that back as one final step to make sure nobody gets caught off guard and gets shut off without the opportunity of coming in and making arrangements.
Okay. So
whether that be phone call or in person.
Thank you, Doug. I will say, so we've got quite a bit more to go through just on this aspect. So we've got water hookup fees, we have wastewater costs, and then, we have the public hearing side, so we'll keep moving.
The Mayor, just at the end of this public hearing, are we voting on these separately or together on the wastewater and the domestic water?
There is a resolution, and it's towards the end of the packet, but the actual vote is separate.
Okay.
The action item is to authorize the mayor to sign the resolution implementing changes in domestic water hookup fees. So we will have to identify, I think, at the end of the public hearing, we'll identify what percentage that we're going to go with, and then we'll apply that to the resolution, and then we will vote on the resolution.
Okay.
And those are items like 21, 22,
Very good.
23 at the end. Okay, so shall we go to water hookup fees?
We shall. Mayor and Council, what you're seeing here is our proposed increase to the hookup fee. Again, we're proposing the PPI index, or the producer price index, of 4.53%. 2 years ago, we brought forth to council kind of what your guys' direction was for us as staff, and your recommendation was that at a minimum, we look at the index increases for hookup fees. This is right now our only way of really allowing for growth to pay for itself. Again, essentially what a hookup fee is that equitable buy-in to the current system. I have to emphasize the current system. We cannot look at any forecasted capital or needs and include that in this calculation. This is just solely built upon the current infrastructure that we currently have in place. So this is when new development comes in, they pay these fees, essentially buying into the system that all the taxpayers have already paid for.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Jake, then why didn't you, or instead of producer price index of 4.53, why didn't you look at the consumer price index of 1.76 like on the prior conversation?
Councilman Haverfield, we did look at that option. When we talked about that with the Board of Appraisers, they decided and proposed probably the 4.53% based on more of that construction index, as the hookup fees are building essentially the capital that we're putting in place. The board just felt like keeping up with the actual construction costs instead of just the consumer price index being milk and eggs and a lot of the grocery and different household items.
Well, I can see shifting the burden to the new development and away from the existing property owners. I think that's fine. I wonder what we're going to be losing long-term if we start shifting too much of the burden to new construction where there isn't any new construction and you're depending on it and it's not coming in. So is there a proper balance being looked at when you present this to us. I guess that's the main thing. I want to make sure that we've looked at both sides of that coin.
Yep, and Councilman, essentially that answer comes from actually doing the calculation. Until we invest a sizable amount into either that numerator or denominator to make that calculation change, we're not going to look at actually redoing the calculation just because of the time and the money that it takes to do that. So our intended purpose was to do it after the construction of the new storage tank, because then we're going to have more capacity in that denominator and a lot more infrastructure in place at that time when we'll actually do the calculation. And that essentially shifts that equitable share in line with where it should be based on what the actual infrastructure in the ground is and the capacity that's available.
But you said that the tank's not going to be replaced for another year.
Correct. So we're not going to redo the calculation until that time.
Till that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea of using 1.76 versus 4.53, it was just an arbitrary decision that was made?
Just the decision, Councilman, to base it based on the actual construction prices that we're seeing in the region versus just the consumer price on the national average.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay.
Okay, so now we just talked about water, so now we're gonna talk about wastewater. Similar subject on, we're gonna talk about rates and hookup fees. And so rates were set, and if you recall, there was a bond that was passed to take out some SRF loans, and we had a smooth increase over a number of years to pay for all the improvements that were planned until 2025. So that's the rate portion. And Jake just got done talking to you about hookup fees and when is a good time to relook at the calculation. Well, it happens to be a good time to look at calculation at the wastewater plant for hookup fees, because we just completed phase 1 of the plant, and that was about $40 million worth of improvement. So that changes the hookup fee significantly enough that we looked at that again. Jake will come back up and kind of run you through the calculations on what that looks like. But other things to know, we're still looking at a utility impact fee for wastewater. That's Jake mentioned that earlier. We're going to continue, and that's something we can bring into our equation. You know, we've always, these are tough decisions to raise rates, for sure. And we're always looking for ways to save some dollars, make things more efficient. We do have the design review committee. We look at options with our team on, you know, doing things differently or moving things forward in our program that saves inflation costs. You know, we still estimate some cost avoidance overall in our program. Our program is total between all the phases about $200 million roughly, and we're looking at around 10% cost avoidance with bringing things forward that the team identified and our reuse. So, but the reality is we haven't built any of that yet. Those are just ideas yet. So it's a little too soon to count those cost avoidance until we get closer. So we talked to the Board of Appraisers. This is the original plan that was brought forward. You can see we're in year 3 of the 16.75%. So, and it's the monthly bill, less than a $6 increase. Mayor pointed out we're still less than everyone else in the valley even with this increase. So this one gets a little scarier if we deviate from the plan. And that's because we're starting some major construction, which you'll hear about from Nate here on Group F on our biggest part of the plant. So we've done $40 million and we still have up to $200 million left to go on projects. And the reason we're doing this is doing all these improvements is we're gaining capacity and we're building the ability for Nampa to grow for the next 20 years. And that's what this plant does. And so that's a good problem to have, to be able to manage your growth in your city and have that capacity. So the Board of Appraisers, they looked at the and I'm going to have Jake look at, he'll show you the fund balance in his part of the slides, but if we were deviating from the plan, we're going to go below our zero and below our fund balance, not too far in the future once we start spending funds on our plan. So that was concerning. If we did take 1 year and did a little bit less, this year, for example, what it does is it just moves that percentage out to a different, a couple of years out or the next year out, and that it's not going to be 16.75%. It's more like 19-20%. So it gets to be a bigger increase for that particular year. So I'm going to have Jake go over his numbers,
Mayor?
unless there's a question for me.
Yeah, Tom, if you look at fiscal year 21, which is what we're talking about here, is 16.75. Then 22, 23, 24 at the same amount, but 25 is back down to 8.28. Just as, again, for consideration, what happens if we're 8.25 or 28 this year? Does it just make fiscal year 25 the 16.75? Is it that easy, or is it not?
So we have the numbers here. So if we did 8%, this year, then in order to maintain the same fund balance graph, we'd be 17.5% in 22, 17.5 in 23, 17.5 in 24, and then another 17 in 25. So it'd be at least 25 would at least double.
And we can't project this out to 26, 27, 28.
Well, we're planning on being done with construction by then, and then getting back to a normal CPI, PPI index by that point.
Just staying flat at that point.
Yeah.
And I know that, again, back to what the taxpayer approved, get this right so the mayor doesn't scold me again. It was on wastewater. So, but again, I have to ask the question, if less was allowed this year. And I guess my only other question then would be, in Project Group E and prior to that, were there savings that were realized in the approach that was taken, or was the projected cost equaled in what was done?
Let's see. So we've only really, the savings as cost avoidance becomes actually savings once you actually build it. So in phase one, I think, did we come in right a little bit below budget in phase one? $1 million below budget there on that one. And then the other phases, I call it cost avoidance because we haven't realized it yet.
Mm-hmm.
About 10% of the total cost, so about $20 million roughly off the total program. And a lot of that has to do with the things that you've heard about in the design review committee.
Right.
And then the reuse is another big one because it changes the filtration that we're required to build. So
we're factoring those numbers in as we maybe realize savings. It just changes these
as we
go forward.
Yes, as we get closer into it.
Okay, thank you.
So how does it impact? I mean, my concern is that we've made a commitment and embarked upon a building project and a loan, and we have a responsibility to finish the project, right? And not position ourselves in such a way that we can't fulfill our obligation. So if we were to change our rate structure, what does that do to bond repayment and the actual cost of the project and where we are?
You want to take that one, please?
Mayor and council, including essentially a separate revenue source in the impact fee, all it really does is gives us another ability to collect revenues, which will decrease the upward pressure on rates. So the impact fee is going to pay for only growth and forecasted growth. The hookup fee already collects the revenue for the growth that we've seen in the past. That's for the current infrastructures in the ground. So as soon as we build something and put it into operation, it is now part of the hookup fee. But everything in our master plans moving forward is where we can start getting a percentage of that paid for through impact fees, essentially driving down the need for higher rate increases. So when you look at bond repayments, all they're looking for is that total revenue line to make sure that we're up to par with what we need to do to pay that off. How we collect those revenues isn't as big of a factor. So we can still show that, hey, this is what we're bringing in impact fees every year. And if that doesn't come to fruition, then you have a higher need for rate increases. So it's an ebb and flow operation.
But if the economy were to stop and we don't have huge growth, I guess my question is, it's very specific to when we approved and we went out to vote on a bond and we clearly communicated this was the path, 16.75% increase over these years to help fund and pay off that bond. If we don't maintain the path that we set forth when we went to vote and we approved it and we said this is what we're doing, if we don't stay true to that, what does it do to our ability to pay off that bond?
Mayor and council, a lot of that's really just speculative. We have no idea, honestly. I mean, in this current climate, we might not collect all the revenues just in rates that we've expected. So there are those things that decrease and increase revenues, and you just take it year by year. We propose, when you look at this 16.75s over the next 3-4 years, that's all just forecasting. That number can change any given year. It can go upwards, it can go downwards, just depends on where we're at.
So if we move the 2021 increase to 2025 or 2026, we still have the ability to pay back the loan in the time frame that we have to pay it back. Is that correct?
Yep. Mayor, what you have to also remember is that it's all compounding, right? So the earlier we take it, the more we're going to generate up front, and that's all going to keep going downward. So if we prolong rate increases and push them out, we're going to have to collect more than we would in the full spectrum of things. So as Tom mentioned, and as we look through these recommendations that we put into place for the Board of Appraisers, we did look at an 8% and a 12% increase. And what we found, essentially, in order to maintain the same exact level of revenue requirement that we need for the long-term goal of the project as is, the 16.75% increases have a net increase of 101%. And as you look at the 12 and the 8% increases, in the long run, you're going to be collecting more in rate increases than you would if you were to take it early. So you're going to collect more and essentially charge more in the long run as you would if you were to delay things now.
Okay. Thank you.
So just a comparison, just for a lay person's mind. So more or less like a mortgage on a house. Could we compare that? If you're gonna pay more on the principal, you're gonna be paying less in the end. Otherwise, if you don't pay more than what's required, then the interest is gonna be more. Gonna cost you a lot more in the end. The challenge is people are hurting now, and so how you weigh that? So,
Councilman, I pity your decision.
You don't want to trade seats tonight?
I do not.
It's the difficulty because they could be hurting worse next year. That's what's
that's
so
what I'm
hard.
saying. We don't know on this COVID. I wish
We don't know.
Wish Gene would just tell us and done. Yeah. So.
Okay, go ahead.
So backtracking a little bit, Mayor and Council, I do have to remind you that we are proposing kind of that average 16.75% increase as defined in that rate study that happened in 2018. But what also was approved in 2018 was the 5-year phase-in and the cost of service. And essentially what that is ensuring that all the different rate classes that we have in place are paying for their fair share of operating the plant. So even though it's a 16.75% increase, not everybody is going to see 16.75%. Some are going to see less than, and some are going to see higher. So that's just due to that continuation of the cost of service shift. And those you can see here in the percent change. You'll see, for example, SE2 is a little less than the 16.75, and some of them are higher than. And SE2, again, is your residential rate class.
And
Again-
concerning is our industrial rates, because you get your total phosphorus, that TP per pound is a 54% increase. That's significant.
Yes, and Mayor, that brings up a good point. Just that cost of service shift again, you're paying for your equitable share in the system and making sure that you're the one paying for operating the plant. And those industrial charges, the phosphorus is what a lot of this project is building, is the ability to decrease that phosphorus that we put into the water. And so those essentially sending the phosphorus to us are the ones that we need to help pay for that instead of putting that burden on the residential people that do not spread the phosphorus out.
Mayor, Jake, are you finding that some of these businesses are starting to pre-treat more to take care of their own phosphorus levels rather than pay these in these rates?
Yes, Councilman Haverfield, there are industries out there that are doing more pretreatment, and we have seen that in the revenue collection side, more so than I think we had anticipated.
How are they handling the disposal of the phosphorus then? Do you know? Is it going to a landfill,
Some are
or-
building their own facilities. Well, yeah, there's our sugar plant here. There's a good example. They're building their own facilities on site, so they're using ponds and they're using looking at digesters and
creating their own plant?
Creating their own plant. Cheese factories, another example. They have their own wastewater plant right on site, and they don't hook up to Nampa, but they discharge into the Purdom Canal. But they're another facility that invested a lot. So you see that in various scales, depending on how big operation it is. And that's becoming more and more common. A lot of the other city, our counterparts, Boise, Meridian, they don't really have much phosphorus that's coming into their plant. And because a lot of they either don't have industry, or the industries that are there are doing a ton of pretreatment. Nampa is unique, and that's one of the things that makes us unique and desirable for industry, is that we have that capability to bring in food processors and have the capacity for it.
Thanks.
So again, just to review, Mayor and Council, you can see just the accumulated rate increase proposals and where we kind of stand with the rest of the valley. What I'm showing here is the fund projection as is. So this is with the planned rate increases, but also what this does is utilizes all of the projected costs of construction, utilizes all of our contingency that we've built up, and does not include any of those potential savings. And this gets us really close to where we need to be. Again, it's too early to really say what we can do on the back end of these rates if we are to pull back a little bit later in the years, but I'm 90% confident that 8% increase on the back end is not going to be as high. It's just what we're looking at. But again, it's too early to sit here and say that we can delay the increases right now just because we haven't started construction. So we'll move into the hookup fees. This is a year, like Tom pointed out, we've invested $40 million in infrastructure through phase one of our plant upgrades. So we brought in FCS and we redid that calculation to include those fees and come up with our new hookup fee calculation. And again, this is a fee mandated. Essentially, how we do the calculation is mandated by the Supreme Court. We cannot do any forward-looking additions to our capital or anything like that through the hookup fee. This is all retrospective. And what it also, again, displays is the equitable buy-in for anybody that wants to come in and build in Nampa. It's looking at what all of the current residents have already put in and all the current industry, what they've put in, and essentially getting a little bit of money back from new development for those things. So the hookup fee essentially is the net system replacement value divided by the system capacity. What goes into that net replacement value is all of our current infrastructure in today's dollars, plus all depreciation, because again, you build something now, 5 years later, it's not going to be worth as much, so we can't charge new development for what's already kind of been used up. So we take out depreciation, and then we take out all debt, because that is collected through rates. So those things are subtracted from that numerator in the replacement value. And the next step is collecting what the current capacity of the system is. NAMP is, I think, unique according to the analysis that was done. We have a much more complex rate system to where we break out all the different rate classes. A lot of different cities do not do that. They essentially have just, this is what it is all in. They don't separate it out based on phosphorus or nitrogen or whatever those different constituents are. So we look at that and we actually want to use all those different spectrums that we collect and produce and make sure that we're using that capacity in the denominator for those different classes instead of just using one number for the total capacity. So that's what you can see here. You can see where the current was, what was added with phase 1, which is where we're currently at, and then what will come in phase 2, just based on capacity. Again, you run through the calculation. We're adding a lot of money to the plant. As you can see, all the debt is put into treatment, because essentially everything that we built in phase 1 is treatment related and not flow related, just bringing in flow. So all the debt is calculated in that treatment fee versus the collection fee. And what you see in this graph then is how that calculation, the numbers that it produced. As you can see, a lot of the different constituents, so the SE2 through the SE7 on the treatment fee actually decreased. And Councilman Haverfield, that is attributed to kind of what you brought up in the escalated indexing. What we found is that the index that we did the last few years of 6% on both of those years was higher than what was actually necessarily needed at that time. So what you're seeing is that true-up effect that we talked about in the calculation. So we're decreasing those portions of the fee to make it that equitable share.
Mayor, Jake, so what is it states full increase. What is the full increase? The 19.17 for a non-industrial and then 37.5 for the industrial?
Yeah, Councilman Haverfield, the percent increase, they're all different percentages because they're all based on their own calculation. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a given percentage, just the collection fee is the 19.17% increase. But when I identify just the full increase, that's taking essentially what the calculation gave us and using that number instead of deviating from that number and doing less.
So these amounts, legals here, to avoid the problems that Hayden had, we're okay with these numbers.
Councilman Haverfield, that's correct. This is what the calculation shows. We can't go a penny higher than what these show, but it's our luxury to go lower if we think that that's necessary. We just can't go higher.
Okay, thanks.
So what we're proposing is essentially taking what that hookup fee calculation provided, knowing that that is what the equitable share in the system is. As you can see, like the phosphorus, that's a very large increase. Again, a lot of that $40 million that we put into phase 2 was for phosphorus. So that's why we have such a large increase there. They're paying for their equitable share in how the system operates. So we identified the full increase as the proposed path just so that we are making sure that those users of the phosphorus and different constituents are paying for their share and not pushing that burden on others. We had FCS look at a few different comparisons. Again, comparing to the residential or the industrial side is utterly impossible because everybody does it differently. Again, nobody does the same rate structure that we do in terms of breaking out the different constituents that they are cleaning. So all we were able to do is look at the residential hookup fee, and that's the calculations that you can see here in the comparisons from where we were to where we're going. Twin Falls we looked into because that's really, really low. We found that they did their calculation some years back, and all they've done since then are CPI increases. So they haven't redone the calculation. It's also noted that they have about a little less than half of the actual depreciated value in their plant that we do, so much smaller. And with that, I will stand for any questions on the rates or hookup fees.
Any questions for Jake at this time? Okay, there could come some as we discuss. I think at this time, we do need to make a decision on what our recommendation is on each one of these points. So we have 4 different calculations. We have domestic water, we have domestic water hookup, we have wastewater and wastewater hookup. So with that, unless I'm missing something.
Do we have anyone?
Oh, I forgot about that. Maybe we need to take a break, but I was going to wait.
Finish this first.
I was going to wait until after the public hearing. I'm so sorry. We do have a public hearing. And so at this time, I would like to open public hearing. I do have one person signed up that I'm aware of, and that is Wayne Patton. Wayne, are you here? Hi, Wayne. You've been very patient. Thank you. So if you, as you come forward, if you could share again your name, your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
Wayne Patton. I live at 2914 East M. the Hawkwood in Nampa here. I'm on Social Security. Every time we get a raise, you guys always seem to get into our pocket. We haven't had a raise. We're on fixed incomes. You guys keep reaching into our pockets every time we turn around. Then you got this COVID thing going on where nobody's working or anything else and you want more. You keep taking and taking and taking. It's getting old, real old. I'm getting tired of it. We only live so long and we can't enjoy our lives because you guys keep taking it from us. You want to raise rates? Raise them on the new construction. Raise the fees for hookups. I have no problem with that. Let the people coming in here that are raising all the prices pay for it. They're all coming here with their money out of California and Washington and Oregon and paying cash for this stuff. They've got the money. Get it from them. Get the developers to pay for this stuff. They're the ones who are causing a lot of the problems. Everything is here and all the infrastructure gets used up, even in the existing, when they start connecting more, because it puts more pressure on all the old stuff that it has to go through to get there. That's all I have to say before I get upset.
Thank you for taking time to come and to share. It's appreciated. Is there anyone else here that had intended to testify during this public hearing? So I don't see anyone else in the room, and then I need to ask, is there anyone online? There is no one online. Okay. So if there is no one else here to testify, you should be proud of yourself. You're the only person that actually came. So thank you so much for doing so.
What upsets me too is just a little tiny notice in the newspaper that I haven't seen Sunday.
Oh, okay. So we did have some people that it's in our packets that did send emails in, and so we have those of record. And so did you all see those as part of the packet? Okay. So with that, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we can get to that discussion point and the decisions that we need to make. And
Mayor Kling,
yes,
I'm going to hit this thing first right off the top of my head here. Now, this is each separate motion, correct?
I think we should take it one at a time. I think that would be easier.
All right. I think I've already made mention of how the amount of income that we have and how many late fees that we have presently right now coming in because of the hardships of our community. I'm going to say no and deny a request for domestic water rate until we can get back on our feet and take care of this without having to get back to our customers and say, you got to pay it. So that's my motion on that one.
Okay, so that was a motion that there be zero increase for the domestic water rate.
Until we can get back on our feet and our community gets back on their feet. and then we'll bring it up again. Okay?
Is there a second?
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion?
So we're voting on all these separately.
Separately. Mhm.
And then if this vote is we wait, how long are we? And I'll talk to Tom, because I do think we need to increase them. But my original statement kind of stands, like whether I'm responsible for it or not, we just shut down people's ability to make money, and then the optics just are not good. Even though I respect you in your department, and we need to increase it, I just really wish we could wait a few months, since we just put the axe on all these people. Whether it's our responsibility or not, the government shut people down to make it a living, and then we're going to increase fees. So if we did say no, Tom, could we come back?
Well, I think that was in my
motion.
In my motion that we revisit this at a later
But what's a
date.
later time?
I don't know. It all depends on the economy, what happens.
Typically, we review these on an annual basis.
Well, there you go.
So the question would be, I don't know that, typically it's on an annual
Typically, it's
basis.
an annual basis. We have done 1 year where we've approved a rate increase, but implemented it halfway through a year. That was, at one time we did do something like that. But it's hard to tell when.
Well, Mayor,
When's a
can't
good
we just
time?
put
When are
it
we
on the agenda? If we decide in January 1st that we need to revisit this, can't that be put back on the agenda?
Is that, it's a good question.
The answer is yes, Mayor. It would have to be noticed, of course, yeah, but it could go back on the agenda at any time.
Okay.
Victor, do you mind?
I would,
January?
yes, I would change my motion that it would be, we would revisit this in February, not January of 2021.
I'll second that, or it's already been seconded.
Well, it has to be seconded again though, right?
So I'll second Sandy- that. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so actually, technically, it's Sandy you've rescinded your motion and changed it to February. Sandy, because she was the original, but you'll get to be on a different one, so thank you. Okay, so the motion on the floor currently that's been moved and seconded is that there's no domestic rate increase, but it will be reconsidered in February of 2021.
Yes, Mayor.
Mayor,
Yes,
may I make a comment?
yes, please.
If you are going to, keep in mind, these values have been built into the budgets that we have already approved. If you go now and take them out, we therefore might have and will have a budgetary impact. So if we pulled revenue out, we therefore have to go back and say, what does that revenue stream look like? And then change the budget to pull out the expense impact. And we've already approved the resolution and published it. So I'm just saying there's a little bit of a challenge there between, in tonight's action item, we've approved the resolution that's been published. So we can always go down, we can spend less, and we can do an amendment later. Just recognize that with any action we take tonight to reduce the income, there will be some amendment later on to reduce the expenditure to make that corresponding.
Thank you for that comment. And so with that, basically what you would be amending are your any capital projects would no longer move forward related to water. So water line replacement that you had planned will not take place.
That's correct, Mayor. We would not start those projects until after the discussion in February and just hold off on them.
Mayor Kling.
Okay, yes.
So Tom, do you know what the 1.76 equates to actual dollars?
It sounds like
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Councilman Haverfield, 1.76% is roughly $140,000.
And you're carrying an additional $3 million surplus in your fund, so sounds like we've got the money to do it if we need to.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is not anything that's new. Often we've budgeted and rates have come in a little lower. It's essentially my job to make sure we don't overspend. So if that's cutting back on a project, or in this case, if we use 400,000 in fund balance instead of the estimated 300, that's kind of the will of council every time we bring a project up for bid. So that we go with the flow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion?
Mayor, I'm just going to, I'll be voting no on this. Wastewater will be a different ballgame for me, but this one with a $3 to $5 increase annually per household, I just feel like the drop from 8% to 1.76% is really considerate. And so anyway, I'll be voting. I think that this is going to pass as motion, but I'll be voting no, but wastewater will be a different story.
Okay.
Mayor Kling, I'll make a statement too that I appreciate the optics of this because as we see our fellow citizens of Nampa struggle, some of us maybe are not struggling as much at this point, but 6 months from now, we could all be in the same boat. So I appreciate the sentiment of what's being considered here in this vote, and I think it's appropriate. So I'll be voting in favor of it.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Brunner,
No.
Mucci,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. So the next area we need to consider is the water hookup fee. The recommended proposal was the producer price index, the PPI West, and that was a 4.53% increase for water hookup fees.
And Mayor, I'll make another motion that the request for approval of the water hookup fees as noted.
Mayor, I'll second the motion.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion? Are you in the 4.53%?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposed water hookup fee at 4.53%.
So Mayor, my question, if it's discussion time, is so to make up from a fixed income residential, what's the reason we're not increasing this more than 4.53? This is new. Right?
In years we've changed the hookup fee by like a cost of materials or these indexes. We've done this before, and that's okay per legal to do that because it's minor incremental and it still meets the intent of the Supreme Court case. So a raising above that would start to compromise the Supreme Court case.
So we can't get over 5, right? Or am I wrong there?
The 5% is for the threshold to do a public hearing.
Right. So we could go up to 5.
4.99.
Or yeah.
You want to?
Sure, Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
It is confusing. 5% is the threshold for the public hearing.
Okay.
The 4.53 is a consumer price index adjustment. And remember, hookup fees are subject to that Supreme Court calculation. And so in order to determine new hookup fees, you really should go back and go through that formula where you look at the total net value of your system divided by the number of users. And that's a process that requires, some significant analysis to get through.
So it's more of a legal liability concern than
correct. And what my office has advised the city is that, you start with a base number. I think ours was done in 2016, 2018. So what we have said is that you should redo that every few years. But in those intervening years, you can, not required to, you could increase it by a consumer price index, where really all you're doing is saying, we need to take care of inflation on the cost of the type of work that gets done there. That's where the 4.53% comes from, is that price index. But if you were going to go above that, even up to 5%, it would be our advice that you go back and recalculate your max hookup fee.
Okay, and then a question, if I may, Mayor. So I'm not saying we're going to do that tonight or anytime in the next week or so, but how often are we doing that? Are we doing that on an annual basis, or what's the cost of doing something like that? Do we have to bring in consultants to do that, or what's
Jake's getting trained up to do it in-house, but our thought process is we do it every time there's a major investment, in which it varies. So at the plant, we just did the $40 million worth of work, so that was a good time. Jake mentioned that we'll do the cost of service for water when we do the elevated tank replacement. So that's another major. And then as Jake was pointing out, we actually over calculated in wastewater and had to do some deductions when we did our cost of service. So it's a little bit of an estimate to do the cost of the CPI, but we believe it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And you do the big cost of service study and spend the time on that whenever you do a major investment, I guess.
Okay,
What I'm trying to say.
so that would make sense if
Yeah.
there's another investment. Mayor, final statement on this, and then of course we'll go to vote. So our fine citizen out here who is concerned, I am with him. New growth needs to pay, and we've been working on that very, very hard as a council.
Yep.
But in this area or whatever, where we're allowed to do so legally and there's not a liability, I'm totally in favor that where new growth helps out and covers for citizens that have been here for many years and are on fixed incomes. So, okay, thanks.
I think the understanding is, and the reason for this case has to do with new growth cannot be pay for existing infrastructure for our citizens, right, to offset. And that's why there has been a legal case.
Yeah.
And that's to ensure that we're not setting money aside on new growth for something that is not growth related.
Right.
You may state that differently. Can you state?
May I interrupt and just ask a question when legal can, I thought that was a very astute statement that was made by our citizen out here. That when we hook onto lines, when we add, and I don't know anything about this, but when we add on the lines, common sense tells me that puts more pressure on old lines. Okay, so if you're adding on with new growth, I guess my question is then why can't that be considered new growth and be paid for by new growth if you're putting pressure on old lines, even though you were going to be repairing something that's already in the ground? Anyway.
Yeah, sure. Madam Mayor, Councilman Brunner, the short answer is the Supreme Court has told us how a hookup fee can be calculated, and we have to stick to that formula. And I'm certainly not disagreeing, with what's been said or the testimony. We just have some sideboards here that we have to operate within. And Tom's right. We typically have hired consultants, and it is expensive to go through these analyses to establish what is that appropriate range for hookup fees. And I think it's wise not to do it every year. And it's further wise to take a look at doing that after you have brought online significant improvements, because that's what's going to change that formula and give you a new picture. So where rates are a little bit more flexible, hookup fees are not. And so that's the answer.
Good explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Tom, what do we do to safeguard ourselves in the future? I'm going to segue off what Councilman Brunner was saying, is if we wait for these capital projects, if we wait for the growth to happen, for instance, this last time, by the time we were done with the impact fee study, we had missed so much of the growth that we could have been taking money on. And that's where I'm concerned, is if we wait, then say we wait 6 months, we revisit this, and then it takes another 8 months for a study to be done and growth happens, we've just shot ourselves in the foot again like we just did a couple years ago.
Councilor Levi, yeah, well, we certainly don't want to get too far behind. That's the reason we were trying to do these little incremental change here, just not to get too far behind that, the 1.76%. But I mean, we certainly understand the optics of that, and willing to look at it later. So the reality is, if we wait 6 months, that's probably okay. We don't want to be delaying rate increases for years and years. That's what gets us in trouble. So.
Follow up, please.
Mm-hmm.
But how long realistically can we expect a study to take that moves us past 6 months? Are we talking about we're going to be 8 months again for another study? So we're 14 months down the road?
Are you referring, Councilor Levi, are you referring to a cost of service study or the utility impact fee study?
Cost of service study, which would change this. But as she asked that question, another question with that is, what is the cost of a cost of service study? Because we could spend a lot of money running these cost of service studies to where it actually financially would not be in the best interest of our citizens.
So we spent about $40,000 on per cost of service study is roughly the cost of it. And so that's why we've been holding off on them until we know that it's worth it to do it, and it actually changes the calculation in the hookup fee. If we're just doing these maintenance projects that we've been doing in water, for example, it doesn't really move the dial on the hookup fee, so it wouldn't be worth spending that $40,000. Eventually, Jake's going to do these on his own. He's got a firm grasp on it, and he's getting everything set up. He can do it. But again, we would probably only spend the time on it when it was something we knew was going to move the hookup fee. So a big investment. Adding more wells, that's another one. If we put in a couple new wells, we add another tank, that's enough that's going to change calculation.
Mayor Kling.
Yes.
Mark, did I hear you say that it's important that we follow an index that's a proven index, or some sort of a standard that we can use, that we can justify that the amount was based upon that? Did I hear you say that, or was that a fleeting thought that just went through my mind?
No, Madam Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, that is true for those years when you consider hookup fee increases without going through the full the full calculation, then you would need to stick to an applicable price index.
Okay. Mayor, the motion's been made and seconded for the 4.53%. I just call for the vote. I think it's important that we maintain that logic then that's been provided to us by legal counsel.
I fully agree.
Has been second.
There we go.
It's
been seconded. Okay, so Deputy roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Lecce,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
So the next item is the wastewater rate increase at 16.75% is what was recommended.
Somebody else want to do it, or I can continue it?
Well, Mayor, if I may ask one more, there were the appraisal committee. There was three. It was this 16.75. There was 12%. Was there?
12% and 8%.
And 8%.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what we're going to do is delay and make the costs overall higher if we don't go with this, but we are going to give some relief to our citizens immediately.
Well, it's up to the council what you decide for the percentage, but the Board of Appraisers recommended the sticking with the plan of the 16.
Well, no, that would be the ideal, I think, if we wasn't at certain times. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to deny this amount, 16.75%, until review 2021 February.
So you're talking about 0% until February?
That's correct.
Is there a second?
Everybody's thinking.
Okay, if there's no second, then is there an alternate?
I'll make the motion that we go with the 8% and then revisit it in February 1st, but 8% would be my motion.
Second that.
I like that.
Is there a discussion? So the motion on the table is wastewater is an 8% increase with a revisit in February 2021.
I really like Darrell's suggestion. Based on, I mean, this was something citizens voted on. We have to.
Well, if we're looking at optics, which I don't like optics a whole lot, but we're looking at optics, at least we're telling those who voted in a very majority fashion for this that yes, we do care, and we're going to drop it by over 50%. Right. So for 6 months.
Hey, Mayor, I got the clarification. If we were to go 8% this year versus 2025, what would be the impact? Well, 2022, 23, 24, and 25 would be slightly more than what the projection is at this point at 16.75. So there'll be a point where we'll have to make up the difference. But I think the question was asked and answered, can we extend the increase? And the answer was yes. So the possibility is that instead of being done with the increases in 25, it might be because of this year's, the peculiar nature of this year, we might be looking at 26 and 27 to make up the difference. If we want to keep the rates less than the 17 possibly. So I guess we'd be revisiting that, but I'm okay with the 8% increase.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
And the last one is the hookup fee. And the recommendation was the full increase is identified by the hookup fee calculation.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Okay. Tom, thank you. Jake,
Good job.
thank you.
Jake, thanks for all
You guys,
Thank you, Mayor and Council. That was not easy.
great
Thank
job.
you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I apologize to everyone that's sitting here. We are going to take a quick bathroom break because we've all been sitting here for 3.5 hours plus.
Oh,
And
wow.
let's just do